Hello and welcome to another reaction stream. Today we're gonna check out some videos about fanservice. Well, the first one is about fanservice, the second one is about anime waifu, and the third one is about adult animation and why it's so far behind, I guess. All by the channel ExoticBankai, which I checked out before on a couple topics. Really interesting channel, really good research, and great for me to have a lot to say, I guess, a lot to comment on. So hopefully gonna be a good stream. I was almost late. I really started last moment. I had to go out for something and I came back 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes before the start of the stream, I rushed to get started. Even though it doesn't really matter to be late 1 minute, it's like, you know, I just like to be perfectly on time. But yeah, the fanservice video, we were supposed to watch it on another stream, but I pushed it to this one. But yeah, some interesting topic. I mean, you know, before we cover the Rule 34 and tie as a topic, very interesting. Again, you know, he went deep into the history of it, and I learned a lot more than I expected. At first, I thought it would be the classic, you know, meme joke, like overview, right? But now he's taking this very seriously, so I think it adds a lot to those videos. But yeah, and I'm sure I have a lot to say about fanservice, waifus, or even adult animation. I mean, I'm into all of that, so let's see. You know, how much I can comment on. As always, link to all the videos in the description. Check out, of course, the original channel. Link to my Discord if you want to follow me, my Streamlabs, Patreon, where you can support me, request reaction, that kind of stuff. I've got a lot of tier on Patreon where, you know, there's different rewards from like movie reaction to anime reaction, so consider it. That's about it. Don't think I have too much more to say. I really feel like this topic will make me yap a lot. I am passionate about waifus, or even the topic of fanservice, you know, I guess. I mean, any topic about anime, you guys know we'll talk a lot about it. Okay, let's get into it then. BGM off. A deep dive into anime fanservice. Let's put subtitles, or to English, to Japanese. Since as always I have a lot of Japanese viewers. Here we go.
Fan service. Fan service. Anyone who's watched anime has heard of it before. We all know what it is. If you clicked on this video just because the thumbnail had boobs in it, you've probably seen it before. Because you're a degenerate.
But also it's one of the most over misused terms in anime, I feel like. I mean, like some, you know, in some normal anime, some lady dressing with, you know, like a dress that shows a bit of cleavage, people will call it fanservice. Or on the other end of the extreme, an actual ecchi anime, people will call it fanservice, when that's a very different thing from like regular fanservice. I mean, it's a very, I feel like, misused term, I feel like.
Just the basic definition of the term, fan service is anything included in a work of fiction solely.
Yeah, and also the fact that it doesn't have to be like lewd stuff, right? I mean, fan service can literally be making the character say something, you know, that doesn't even fit the situation, right? But it's like their classic line, so it's fan service to just keep making the character say it.
To try and please the audience, specifically without contributing anything to the plot or media other than making the fans happy. Now, there are many different ways this can show up. It would be impossible for you to have consumed media before without seeing some form of fan service. It might be a cameo or reference in a movie, a character getting more screen time because of their popularity, a gratuitous action scene, or a horror movie with tons of gore. Even an encore at a concert would broadly be considered fan service. But by far, the most common form of fan service is the sexual kind. And I would say even more specifically, the anime kind. Because while the term still has that broader definition, most of the time you'll hear the words fan service, it'll be in reference to an anime with tons of lewd imagery.
I guess so, yeah. I don't think people really use that term often for like movies and TV show and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, if you watch Game of Thrones and there's tits and dicks all the time, you don't really call it fan service. You know?
Skimpy outfits, bouncing breasts, panty shots, wardrobe malfunctions. How does that even happen? While media outside of anime and manga still include tons of sexual content, from shirtless dudes to bikini-clad women to the entire male cast of Game of Thrones penises, most of the time anime is still the only place you'll hear that sexualization.
Recently I was watching the Knights of the Seven Kingdom, a new Game of Thrones spin-off, and they had some guy, like some old guy with the biggest dong, literally like an horse dick, for no reason. I mean, you know, it was just a random scene where, like, you know, he just banged the woman and he opens the door and just full frontal biggest horse dong.
Referred to as fan service, and this is all widely regarded as a negative to the medium.
Foremost, I guess since we're getting into that, I like it. I don't mind it. I'm definitely a big fan of anime and manga in general, right? So for me, I've gone into the depths, right? And I'm definitely really into this stuff. No shame in that. So, you know, I'm not saying it's always good, but I definitely don't mind. Like, I think some people are very prude, you know, like people who watch anime come from very different, like, background, right? Some people are very prude, some people are very, like, maybe religious, right? So there's a lot of reason it might bother them, but, you know, there's so many shows where, like, you know, there's like a minute fan service scene, or sometimes just a panty shot or something, and for someone that's enough to, like, ruin the show for them, you know what I mean? For me, it feels so stupid, right? Like, myself, I'm not really into panty shots. I don't think, you know, it's not something that really, like, gets me going that much. But if I see one, it's like the least of my worry. It's like, I don't really care that much. It doesn't ruin the show for me. In the same way that if there's some other type of scene that I don't really enjoy, it didn't ruin the show for me. But for some people, and I think it's just part of, like, you know, different country, different society and way to look at things, right? Like, people often make the comparison, like, in many countries, violence is okay, but anything, you know, lewd is, like, instantly, like, banned, right? That's why, like, in video games for a long time, you know, you could play GTA and murder people so much, right? But some people, what they really took a problem to is, you know, being able to go to, like, a war or you know, like a strip club or something. Like, that was really, like, the bad stuff that would get you the worst rating. You know, and I kind of feel the same, right? Like, a lot of people watch shonen anime where there's a lot of, like, big violence, right? But the one panty scene or something is suddenly, like, ruining the show for you. You know, the problem is with you and with, like, the society that made this, you know, like, that made you so sensitive to, like, sex stuff rather than, like, violent stuff. I mean, personally, I don't mind either. I love gore and I love fanservice stuff. But again, I think that's how it is for a lot of people. I don't know how many times I've seen, you know, I check out reviews sometimes by animalist and forum comments, and yeah, people, like, literally just saying how much they hate a show for, like, a senior, you know, of fan service, when, you know, that's like 0.1% of the show, you know what I mean? It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Do I like to say I feel I am very open-minded compared to most people, so, like, you know, I'm not always a good example for, like, my own thoughts are definitely far from reflecting most people.
Many people hate it unconditionally, and most people have some complicated opinion about it, as you can even see from this poll I ran on.
How do you feel about fanservice in anime? I like all fanservice 2%. I like fanservice when it feels the show isn't intrusive 35%. I don't really care 13%. I don't like, maybe except a few show, 23%. And I don't like any fanservice, 27%. I think for me it's between I like all and I like it when it fits, but, like, eventually think about it, I don't have, like, a big moment in my head that shows up where I'm like, this fanservice scene kind of ruined something. There might be some, like, it is an art to use fanservice sometimes, right? And some director like to use it too much in the middle of, like, a serious scene. That might be a problem sometimes, but yeah, I feel like I don't have many examples.
On my channel. The term itself is negative and often used as a criticism of a piece of media. Oh, I liked this show, but it has too much fan service in it. So let's take a deep dive into the world of fan service. Where did it come from? Why is it so common despite being hated? And is there...
I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's hated by a vocal minority, right? At least that's how it feels to me, right? it's the same way I constantly complain about how much terrible isekai there is every season, but they're not being made for no reason. There's a ton of people who must be loving them, you know, more people than hates it, basically.
Such thing as good fan service.
I mean, definitely. Depending on, you know, if it fits the show in some way, or if it gets me horny, both can be valid, no?
Also, it should go without saying that this video will have tons of sexy anime girls and even a few guys. So if you're not into that sort of thing, or you're my dad, then I might suggest clicking off the video now. Now, to cover why fan service is so common, or at least my best guess, what better place to start than its history? After all, it wouldn't be a Lextorious video without an unnecessary amount of research.
But I love it.
And as it turns out, the first recorded piece of media meant to pander to the audience with sex was a French film named Menina la Fille.
Maybe I am qualified to talk about the subject. Frenchman right here. Menina la Fille sans voile. Wow. Oh, Brigitte Bardot. Okay. She's pretty famous in France, yeah.
Sans voix, or Menina, the girl without sails. I hope I got that pronunciation right. I only took French in school for like 9 years. The film featured the character of Menina, a woman in a bikini, which at the time of release in 1952 was considered very risque for American audiences. And so when the movie was released in America, it was of course renamed to Menina, the girl in the bikini, even though Menina does not show up or wear a bikini until almost 2/3 of the way through the film. And none of this has anything to do with anime. I just think it's really interesting to talk about because the sexualization of women to pander to a male audience has existed for such a long time, entirely separate to the anime community. But the first ever anime to include...
I mean, if you really want to go back in time, wouldn't you call a lot of like old Greek sculpture and stuff like that, you know, like naked woman or naked dude, kind of fan service in a way? Like, there are arts, sure, but you can see the guy's dongs and balls, you can see the woman's breast. I mean, you know, the artist was trying to please the people looking at it.
Pandering of the sexual variety was a little series called Cutie Honey. Cutie Honey was a magical girl shonen manga originally created in 1973 by Go Nagai.
Which is definitely tied to the history of fanservice because, again, for me, I think Eishi show are very different, right? When the full focus tends to be lewd stuff, so I don't think it's quite the same as like normal fan service, right? But Go Nagai is pretty important because in the first issue of Shonen Jump, he started a manga, so back in the late 60s, called Shameless School, and he's kind of credited with starting like popularizing Eishi and kind of lewder manga, I guess. And as always, later on also like Giant Robot, and also like very gory, ultra-violent stuff with Devilman or Valence Jack.
It featured the titular character, Hani Kisaragi, having to transform from a Catholic schoolgirl into a magical superhero to defeat villains and save the world. The sexual element of the story then comes from Cutie Honey's design being a busty anime girl, as well as the fact that she loses all her clothes for part of her transformation. This brief nudity, as well as most of the show's plot, actually came from a retooling early in development, where it was originally intended as a shoujo series, meaning meant for girls, before they failed to make the time slot and had to change into a shonen series, meaning meant for boys, to be aired. The shoujo version of the series didn't actually contain any PG material, but with the change in audience, the show's creator decided to add nudity and more violence in order to pander to the male audience, and thus fan service in anime was born. And fun fact, Cutie Honey is credited as the first shonen anime with a female protagonist. So girl power, I guess.
I mean, I guess if you look at it in this kind of lens, yeah, this is not very positive, right? Like, it's definitely something I'm sure he's going to talk about, which is kind of a contradiction, right? Like, I'd like to believe that I am for girl power and I respect women, but also I really like anime fan service, which often is like objectifying women. And I always thought, you know, how do I reconcile that, you know? I mean, it's kind of the same thing of like eating animal abuse, but eating meat from the crazy meat industry, which, you know, is pretty fucked up, right? It's the same thing, like human contradiction, right? I have a lot of those. I think most people have a lot of those.
Though Cutie Honey did end up becoming a very popular franchise. Through the years, the show had its original anime spawn tons of spin-offs and sequels, including a live-action movie and tie-in show directed by Hideaki Anno.
Yeah, I remember about that. I haven't seen it, but I need to watch it.
Creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And let's actually talk about Anno for a second, because he is a key piece in the history of fan service. While anime and manga, especially in the magical...
That's a good point, yeah, with how popular Evangelion is. For example, like, is the scene of Rey naked, is it fan service? Or is there a reason for it, right? Because the scene where like Shinji walks into the apartment and she's naked, and she doesn't react to him looking at her naked, is that only fan service, or is that for the plot? Because it says that, again, she's not a normal human, she is extremely cold, she doesn't even react to someone seeing her naked. That's when fan service gets interesting, right? It is both fan service if you want, but also definitely for the plot.
Girl genre followed in the footsteps of Cutie Honey, pursuing more and more overt nudity and sexualization. It was actually Anno's studio Gainax that further pushed the envelope. Because before Gainax was officially created in 1984, the founders actually started off creating fan films for the Japanese sci-fi convention Daikon in 1981. Their studio was originally called Daikon Film, and the first animations they premiered were called Daikon 3 and 4, named after the third and fourth convention they premiered at. The fan films are what you would expect of an animation group formed entirely of college students attending a sci-fi convention, featuring everything from a mech battle between Macross characters and Godzilla to a lightsaber fight between an anime girl and Darth Vader.
It's great. I mean, if you haven't seen them, watch them. They're very short, like a couple minutes, but they're fun.
The soundtrack of one of the James Bond films, as well as an Electric Light Orchestra song. More important than the blatant copyright infringement, however, was Daikon 4's appropriation of the Playboy bunny suit on its main character, as this was a very skimpy outfit at the time, which would go on to be a staple of sexy anime girls everywhere. And once Gainax officially formed from the members of Daikon Film, they would take the sexualization to
Gunbuster.
all of their future works. The first major influence of Gainax,
I mean, obviously I think many people know, but you've heard the term Gainaxing, which is a referencing to incredible breast animation. They kind of pioneered that.
This was actually Hideaki Anno's directorial debut, Gunbuster, in 1988.
It's a really good show.
The mecha anime was an OVA, meaning it didn't air on television and was thus allowed to show more nudity and adult themes, primarily through its multiple bathing scenes and ridiculous jiggling.
But, as an expert, once again, this is like mid-80s, I think, and frankly, TV anime, even before that, showed breast. I mean, I remember watching 79 Gundam, the first Gundam, and that was a long time ago, and being shocked that in one of the episodes there's a basing scene, like many anime, but you can see nipples. I was pretty surprised because, again, it's a TV anime, it's a 79 anime, right? And yeah, I think this is far from the only example. It's actually a thing, I think, that like back then there was more TV anime where they didn't really, they showed nipple, I think. I mean, except if I watched the BD version, maybe. I might be wrong, actually. But I think it was more common, you know, like Ranma 1/2, for example, and stuff like that. I think they also had some. And then, when we get more to the modern day, yeah, it's only for, like, Blu-ray version. On TV, they wouldn't show it anymore. Interesting.
The jiggle was actually so prominent in Gunbuster that it inspired the term Gainaxing or Gainax bounce in order to describe over-the-top anime boob bouncing, typically with each breast moving independently of one another.
I mean, there's some shots in that show in Gunbuster that are actually hilarious. There's a shot, I remember, where she like throws herself down on the bed on her back, and she has this tank top, and you can just see the movement of the breast moving like some freaking pudding. It's like, I don't know if it's odd or hilarious, yeah, but it's really funny. By the way, I think that's Kaguya-sama.
And that proclivity for skimpy outfits,
It's a parody of fanservice.
its casual nudity, and absurd breast physics carried over from Gunbuster into anime as a whole. Now, I don't think Gainax was solely responsible for the popularity of fan service, the same way I don't think Cutie Honey was, but considering they had an entire term invented to describe how they animated breasts, it's pretty obvious they had a major effect. No effect so major as possibly coining the term, though. Yes, that's right, on top of pioneering anime bunny girls and bouncing anime boobs, the first usage of the term fan service to describe sexual pandering was in 1991's Otaku no Video, produced by none other than Gainax themselves.
I watched that only recently. It's a very weird thing. It's like a parody documentary kind of thing, I guess.
Now, I will say it is highly unlikely to be the actual invention of the term, because for as much research as I did online, I can't seem to find that information anywhere. But Gainax's parody anime on otaku culture and their own studio's founding does use the term fan service to describe sexual scenes meant to pander to the audience before any other mention of it online or in media. So what I think is most likely is the term was unofficially coined somewhere in the Japanese otaku space in the late 80s, possibly even referring to Gainax's work like Gunbuster, and then Otaku no Video is definitely what cemented it in pop culture, because it's only after 1991 that the term gained widespread appeal. Early internet users began adopting it, the definition of the term became broadly known.
Wait, so I never really realized that fanservice is also the term in Japan. I always assumed they had an equivalent term in Japanese.
And in 1995, with the release of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Gainax themselves were once again using the term, with some of the characters in the show even promising more fan service in the previews for next week's episode.
Okay. Really?
Which is incredibly funny when you consider just how critically acclaimed Evangelion is. That this deep exploration of trauma, religion, and the human psyche started off as a mech show with girls in latex suits made by the Jiggling Boobs guys. And it's by the mid-90s that fan service just became an integral part of anime as a whole.
I mean, it's been a long time though, but is there even that much fanservice in Eva? I haven't seen the actual show in a long time. I've seen the movies recently, the Rebuild movies. There's a good amount, but in the classic show, I don't even remember that much. I remember like Rei being naked, the suits, I guess, Shinji jacking off. That's probably it.
An inseparable part of the culture that exists and thrives to this day. So here is where I'll break away from the timeline a bit to explore the question of why. Why is fan service so popular? Why?
Well, that's probably like the easiest answer. People are horny. The human evolution, has made us very horny being. The need to procreate in modern society evolving into the need to find pleasure, I guess.
Why did it continue to grow from 1998 to where it is today?
That's absolute Gainax.
Alright, next question. I mean, shonen is by far the most popular genre of anime to exist, and it literally just translates to boys comic. Its only defining trait is that it's a genre made for teenage boys, and what could they love more than boobs? Well, how about today's
Mecha? Maybe. Some days it might be Mecha. Some other day it might be boobs.
sponsor, NordVPN?
I've already got it. Oh, it's a joke. Okay.
Ever since the Cutie sponsored me, that would have been a sick transition, though, you got to admit.
Okay. You get me. Oh, you get me.
Ever since the Cutie Honey anime transitioned from a shoujo time slot to a shonen time slot and decided that nude power-ups would be exciting, it was game over. If your primary market is teenage boys, of course you're gonna push the envelope into softcore porn.
Which is funny because doesn't the nude transformation is still a thing even in like more, shoujo magical girl stuff, except it's not like explicit, right? But one time I tried watching one of the very first prequel show, which is totally aimed at young girl, right? And same thing, they have like obviously like white lights, but it's the same thing of like Like it's just a modified version of the trope, I guess, without the, lewd stuff, obviously.
Territory as hard and fast as possible. It's literally free money, especially when the majority of Japan's young men are overworked and single, with 50% of Japanese males at age 20 saying they never had a girlfriend.
Right, and also the thing of, people literally giving up on that and, makes sense.
Needless to say, there is a massive audience in Japan of young men who desire sexual content, and animation studios are more than willing to cater to them. And that might be the biggest reason why fan service is so prominent in anime.
But you could also argue that at this point, why do you want this teasing stuff? Just buy an AV. I mean, Japan is absolutely massive as far as AV go. So, even though sure there's mosaic, why wouldn't you buy that instead of just some anime where it's just a girl in bikini? Thus is the question. Maybe people like the teasing aspect of it, I guess. That's definitely an interesting question because, again, I like fanservice, and I think sometimes it can be way hotter than an actual AV or something, right? But what's the logic of it? Wouldn't I want the full package of people banging rather than just some girl in bikini? I am very orange. Give me a second. There's some weird filter going on my camera. Give me a second as I try to fix this, but yeah, again, it's yeah, I look very in a fog or something. It's a very interesting thought. How do I fix this? Give me a second. No, I don't know. Maybe my lighting is just bad today. It's fine.
While a lot of countries are just as open about sexuality and nudity in television, very few have the specific lonely male youth problem that Japan has. Plus, countries like the US are just so incredibly behind when it comes to openness for sexual content. You've got things like the Hays Code from 1934 to 1967, which banned nudity.
White slavery shall not be treated. What? Miscegenation, sex relationship between the white and black race. Wow.
Suggestive clothing, and scenes of passion not integral to the plot, as well as massive pressure from religious groups to boycott any media that didn't uphold those good old-fashioned values on which we used to rely.
Yeah, but it's not really a thing anymore, right? The 90s really changed a lot of that.
That's such a fucking stupid line. I hate that line. Which all leads to America being effectively 30 years behind every other country when it comes to sexual content and still struggling to catch up. This is a large reason why cartoons in the West still market themselves towards children, whereas anime in Japan markets to 15 to 25-year-olds and has no problem showing them titties. And so
it's really the simple argument of, let's say you're a parent and you're willing to let your kid play something like GTA. You think it's okay. The amount of violence and killing you can do is okay. Then why is it a problem? Any kind of weird stuff? If you think your child is mentally healthy enough to understand it's just a game and, and all that, then by the same metric.
Is the history of fan service, or at least everything I know about it and think is interesting. But we still haven't covered why it's so controversial. I mean, it can't just be a case of indecency because a lot of anime fans are in fact incredibly horny. I myself love big anime titties and ripped dudes. They're fantastic. But the problem lies more in how that sexuality is executed within the show. Referring back to the poll I ran,
again, there's so many subtopics on this. Objectification of women, the way some people get, again, trapped in liking this stuff rather than real people, how it ruins show for some people. There's so many topics.
2% of people enjoyed fan service in all circumstances. 35% enjoyed it when it fit the show or wasn't intrusive, and 23% enjoyed it in select shows. So a combined 58% majority of people said that they enjoyed fan service in select shows, typically when it wasn't intrusive. The problem then is the shows where it is intrusive, where only
I need some example because again, I'm really struggling to remember like big moments in my head where I was like, this is a stupid time to have fan service.
2% of people said that they still enjoyed it. So what is intrusive fan service? Well, to answer that question, I want to talk about an anime I just recently finished watching. It's called Fire Force, and anyone who's seen that show immediately knows where I'm going with this.
See, for me, this is a perfect example of like, this doesn't bother me one bit. I've only seen a bit of Fire Force, but I do know that people always complain about Tamaki, I think is her name. You know, it's a serious, you know, even in serious fighting battle, you know, she's put in this situation. This is like, for me, far from the level of it bothering me. You know what I mean?
Fire Force is a great show. It's a shonen anime about a world where people spontaneously turn into demons, and a special team of firefighters with pyrokinesis are tasked with taking them out. There is a lot more than that, including a group of villains they fight, but for the most part it's cool action scenes between people with fire powers.
I think I kind of dropped it as season 1, but it's been a long time. Maybe I should give it another try. I don't even remember if I dropped it or not.
It's also animated by David Productions, the people who make JoJo, and carries over some of the insanely cool sound design they used for that show.
The world.
However, there is a character in Fire Force called Tamaki. She's pretty cool, she's got fire cat powers, and it took me 6 episodes to realize that her and another character just named Maki were 2 different people. But far and away, the most important thing about Tamaki to both this video and her inclusion in the show is that she has a special ability called the Lucky Lecher Lure, which I believe is meant to be a play on words in Japanese.
I forgot that's what it was. Yeah.
That got roughly translated into English and basically means lucky pervert syndrome. In other words, she has a canonical power in the show acknowledged by other characters that puts her into lewd situations through bad luck. Here's an example of that.
But again, like, I'm not gonna call any of this great or highbrow. You know, I genuinely enjoy high quality fan service, right? Just a Darling is a good example, right? You know, in contrast, this is very like, you know, the lowest level, you know, like just guy groups, girl boobs, yeah, you know, it's not high level, but, you know, in a show like Fire Force, which is a basic shonen, in the same way that this is a pretty main scene, there's gonna be a lot of like really, you know, stupid jokes that are not that interesting, or stupid fights that are not that interesting. So I kind of see it as the same level for me, right? You know, it's just like an element of anime storytelling that, you know, in something like that, it's just like, whatever. I forget about it in 2 seconds.
In almost every episode of the show, Tamaki will slip and fall and have her boob fall into a character's hand, or all of her clothes fly off, or something equally perverted. It is honestly insane how much the show is willing to bend reality in order to have someone accidentally molest this girl.
I kind of love the concept though, like turning the usual Lucky Sugebe thing into like a literal living character that acknowledges it as a real concept. I love the meta aspect of, you know, of course the author of a shonen wants character that often get in a situation like this, and so he makes an actual character that is fully self-aware of it. It's kind of like, I like it as a concept at least.
And on the surface, her superpower is just a bit annoying, but it isn't critically negative to the anime. Fire Force is already an incredibly horny show and is willing to put every character in the nude at some point. Like, you remember Maki, that girl I talked about confusing Tamaki with? She's ripped. Oh, and what about the nun, Iris? Yes, they have a nun on the team. Surely nothing bad would ever happen to... Oh my god. I mean, what about a character whose only defining trait is that they are fully clothed head to toe? I mean, you can't even see her face with this thing up. What the fuck? The show even has a nude firefighter calendar episode just as an excuse to get all the characters naked. Oh, and I don't even mean the girls. It's the boys this time. The entirety of Fire Force is just horny, which is totally fine because that's just the tone of the show. But what does become a problem at some point is Tamaki, because she is sexualized to such a degree that the fan service
that she's barely a character anymore, yeah. I could argue, I can definitely agree that that's probably the biggest problem that can happen, is when a character is just that, and they lose anything else.
Becomes her only defining character trait. Not only does she get into unfortunate situations in every episode for no other reason than to give the audience a boner, but the fan service actively interferes with the plot and her character. Now, I'll try not to spoil anything, but Tamaki at some point ends up getting ambushed and beat up trying to protect some kids. She's not the best fighter and almost gets beat to death by a character she previously trusted, leaving her a bruised mess in the ground where our main character Shinra has to save. Tamaki looks up at Shinra, crying, begging him to save her because she's so emotionally overwhelmed at what's happening. He steps up like the hero he is and begins fighting the bad guy. And then this happens.
I get it. Again, for me, I just watched too many anime that I think I'm just used to it. So, you know, the whole thing of like, you just had an incredibly serious scene, but by the rule of shonen, you suddenly need a comedy scene to like lighten the mood a little bit before getting back to it. Like it's such a like a writing trope, you know. But yeah, it would be better without it. Yet at the same time, again, it doesn't bother me that much. Yeah.
All right, well that just deflated every ounce of tension in the scene, and that's not even where it ends.
Like in most anime, this wouldn't be like a fanservice scene. It would more be like an old joke, basically. But it is a trope of like deflating the seriousness a little bit. Like that, they do it all the time.
Dude, what the fuck? What am I supposed to be feeling right now? Seriously. Because when you strategically burn all of her clothes off and have her do her cute little cat pose, I legitimately think you want me to feel horny looking at a character who was almost just beaten to death. And Tamaki continues to be in this weirdly erotic outfit for the rest of the fight. She even gives Shinra a serious emotional speech while looking like this.
I mean, that's really not that real.
Again, do you want me to take this seriously? Because remove the sexualization from this scene and it's one of the most emotional in the show. The tonal whiplash is just hurting my head at this point. And while this scene in particular is the worst offender, Tamaki's entire character throughout the whole show continues to be like this. She doesn't win any serious fights, she doesn't have any big redeeming moments, she loses and gets beat up and saved by one of the big strong male characters over and over again. It takes her 2 entire seasons to even begin developing her character or suggest that she should be taken seriously. And even at the end of her first training, with all this music swelling and emotion building as she starts to be a competent character, her dumb pervert ability kicks in and deflates the whole scene again.
It's more a disability at this point. Maybe I'm too brain-rotted, but that's actually a pretty good joke. Like, the delivery was good. I'm sorry, but that's pretty good.
Maki is the textbook definition of a fan service character. Her whole reason for existing within the show is a vehicle for sex jokes and horny moments. That's it. Any contribution to the plot or action she has is undermined by her sexualization. Except for one scene of hers, one Tamaki exclusive moment that might be the best moment in the whole show, including the time a guy deflected a nuclear bomb.
What happened to being fireman?
So to set up some context, the bad guys in Fire Force also have fire powers. Big shocker, I know. And during a confrontation against these bad guys in season 1, Tamaki and the nun Iris end up against a guy named Assault. Please don't ask why there's nuns in this show, you already know the answer to that. Assault is hyped up beforehand and shown to be an incredibly powerful character. He attacks the girls, nearly kills them, and then this happens. As it turns out, Assault is a virgin, and even touching a girl just completely debilitates him, which Iris and Tamaki use to their advantage to just beat him to death with a lead pipe.
It's probably also the situation. I mean, serious fight, but again, you know, you are the villain, but you are confronted to this, you know, totally out of seriousness moment. Yeah.
It's a great subversion of tropes, an incredibly funny scene, and it's not even the one I'm talking about. Because much later, near the end of season 2, Assault recovers from having his brains bashed out and challenges Tamaki to a rematch. And the show goes through his training arc, where he locks himself inside his room and watches porn for a month straight in order to get over his incredible horniness.
Just get laid. That would be faster. Like, literally, like 2 minutes, you know? Bruh.
They then have their rematch, and this happens.
Yeah, because now it's becoming a bit more cultured, so now it's not just boobs, like, it can be the tiniest thing that's gonna get him.
That is amazing. I love how they went 110% on the sound design of Tamaki falling like that. It's probably the single funniest shot in the whole show, and Assault just fucking passes out after it. This, to me, is what the fan service in Fire Force could be. It's funny, tonally consistent, and contributes to the plot of the show. If all of the major fan service moments were saved for scenes like this, I would love it. But they end up spilling out into the serious moments of the show and clashing way too hard to be enjoyable.
指一本で私の矢を止めるとは腕は全く鈍っていないか
修行は完成したもう負ける要素がない
Alright.
これは素人違う
In the bigger picture, I don't think fan service itself is bad. While some people might object to it just on the basis of being too lewd, that isn't really the problem. I mean, if you're not okay seeing boobs in a show where a villain literally explodes a guy, that seems like a you problem.
Which, unfortunately, again, a lot of countries and a lot of people have this view, right, where like violence in media has been accepted so much more than anything good. It's weird double standard kind of thing, you know?
Service, more often than not, lightens up the mood of whatever it's put in. It will deflate the tension, it will overshadow the seriousness, it will, if done incorrectly, clash with any serious tone you're going for.
That the Prison School, the most serious fan service show of all time, I mean. Crazy show.
You can certainly put fan service like Fire Force's into comedic scenes because sex jokes work very well. You can put it into lighthearted scenes because it adds levity, but there are just some types of scenes that fan service like this should not be a part of. And the worst fan service elements in anime, the ones that turn people against it entirely,
Probably the sexual assault fan service, I assume.
are when it's put into those types of scenes anyway. You'll have a dramatic or serious conversation punctuated by a middle school titty joke. It just isn't given the same level of maturity as the rest of the elements in the show because to a lot of people, including its creators, fan service is still childish and immature by its very nature. Discussing the history and definition of the term, we know that fan service isn't added to a show for the same reason that the other elements are. It's to excite 15-year-old boys. It's to please the audience. It's to service the fans. So it's almost always put in with way less thought than any other element of the show. And that just doesn't work. Again, I have no problem with Tamaki vs. Assault because the whole
But again, I feel like it's not really a true argument, right? Like, in a lot of shonen, the author is not going very far for like creativity as far as like powers, right? how many times we're gonna have a shonen where the guy's power is just water or fire? So like, to me, it's equally as bad as, you know, a character being dressed in a bikini just to be constantly fan service. Like, it's the same level of, like, you know, not big creativity, and yet it doesn't bother me that much if there's other good elements to the show. Obviously, I wish all elements were good, but that's very few show, right? I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Premise is absurd, and I wouldn't have a problem with Tamaki's weird cat cry if they hadn't chose to be immature at a serious moment. Just keep her in her regular outfit, which is already very fan servicey. It just blends in better because it has reason to exist. Going off of that, you can have entire shows crammed full of fan service that are still done well because they know how to use it. Just look at Food Wars for an example of this.
You know, I've been brainwashed about fan service for so long. It's been so normal to me that I remember, like, a long time ago, I was trying to get my mom into anime a little bit. It was 2014 maybe. I had made her watch some Natsume Legion shows, some Death Note or something. And at some point, I don't know why, I thought Shokugeki no Soma would be a good idea. Totally forgetting the food gas. And I remember watching episode 1 with her and, you know, realizing the mistake I've made. Because again, for me, you know, I'm so used to it that I didn't even remember. And that was very awkward. Yeah.
Food Wars is a cooking show. The entire plot is a kid who's good at cooking goes to enter a competition to be the best cook. Standard anime plot. Pretty much just a shonen story, but with cooking battles instead of anime fights. But
it really feels like so long ago this was popular. I mean, I really enjoyed the first 2 seasons, and I think from what I remember, it just crashed and crashed. First, the story gets less interesting, but also the production value, right? I think it changed studio and all that, and the last couple of seasons were just terrible. Maybe not as bad as something like Seven Deadly Sin type of crash, but it was really bad. Yeah. Unfortunate.
The entire appeal of the show is its fan service, because every time someone eats a good dish in Food Wars, well, this happens.
This is what I remember. Like, I was so excited to show this to my mom, and then I remember like this thing coming up and me remembering this scene and that this show is constantly like this, and I was like, what the fuck was I thinking? But again, for me, you know, it had become so normal that, yeah, like this is pretty light, you know.
That happens every time. The food in this show gives people orgasms.
I wish that's how food in real life worked. I mean, I don't really want to cream my pants, but I wish food was this good every time.
Just how it works. Is that a stupid premise? Yes. Is this show basically a hentai without the nudity? Also yes. But it isn't hiding any of that.
But it's not stupid, it's incredibly fun, right? Because a simple cooking show is pretty boring to most people. So coming up with the idea of, you know, making everything so much more over the top, in the way people enjoy the food, right? They're not just describing the food is good because this and that. They're like constantly describing it with like crazy visuals, right? It's not always just coming. A lot of time, you know, it's like some crazy visuals of I am hanging out on this tropical island and it's beautiful and all that, you know, like this way of making everything more fun with visualization and over the top reaction. Again, it's very creative, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's great.
Food Wars doesn't hide much of anything, actually. Food Wars wears its fan service on its sleeve. It is very open about being so sexual. And
also, the bit of backstory about the illustrator for, I forget if it's the manga or the light novel, but the original, I think it was the manga name, was an anti-artist, a Dajin artist, before the manga, so even less surprising. Yeah.
Because it's a comedy, using busty women and ripped dudes in unexpected situations just blends right in seamlessly. The show uses every opportunity to make sex jokes or horny food scenes or ridiculous moments driven by hentai logic, and it will get every character naked to achieve this. Girls have food orgasms, guys have food orgasms, the main character has food orgasms, old men have food orgasms. The mechanic is treated entirely equally, which makes it even funnier when it happens to someone unexpected, not just all the hot girls. This equality also dissuades any idea that any specific character just exists for their sexiness. When every character on the show is sexualized, then none of them have to exist purely for eye candy. They can all be functioning characters because the show has no shortage of characters to draw horniness out of. And to top it off, the food orgasms even serve the plot, surprisingly enough. Because with an animated show about food, it can be very hard to show the audience how something might taste. We can see the delicious food, but how can we know what it's like to eat?
Again, it's insanely creative, it's insanely creative.
Well, how about showing the person eating it nutting their brains out while describing the food like it's sex? That's not only a very convincing way to relay how good it is to the audience, but also a built-in set piece in the same way that special moves in shonen fights are. It's an excuse to go over the top and add excitement and crazy animation to something that in real life isn't that interesting to watch.
I really wish this show didn't go to shit because I've not really been able to get into any other food and cooking show. I know there's quite a few very liked one, but they all end up feeling very bland in comparison, right? I don't know. I like the over-the-topness.
And so even though Food Wars has way more fan service than a show like Fire Force could even dream of, none of it ever comes across negative like it does with Tamaki, because it's tonally consistent with the whole...
You're saying that, but I am sure that there's a ton of people who probably complain about it and would say that the show would be better without the scene, even though it's kind of like the core of the show.
Because the whole show doesn't take itself that seriously. Food Wars is one of the few shows that can achieve this sacred title of good fan service, almost entirely because it understands how to blend it in and make it work for the show. It isn't just a cooking show with nudity slapped in, the fan service is a critical element. And so before we wrap up this discussion of fan service, I want to cover just one more show, because it would be a disservice to the entire video to not cover it. But before I do, let's jump back into the history of Gainax, because I didn't quite finish telling the story. With the release of Neon Genesis Evangelion, which went on to be one of the biggest anime properties of all time, you would think Gainax would be doing great. And they...
Nope. Which is always very interesting.
Were, if only for a short while. It was only 2 years after the release of this massively successful show, however, that Gainax would start to fall, as it had been revealed that the company had concealed 1.56 billion yen in revenue from Evangelion that they had failed to pay taxes on.
I forgot that was the story. That's right.
Audited by Japan's National Tax Agency, the president, Takeshi Sawamura, and his accountant were both arrested and sent to jail in July of 1999 for accounting fraud. In light of this, one of the studio's founding members, Yasuhiro Takeda, had this to say: "I don't think he purposefully set out with the goal of evading taxes. It was more that our level of accounting knowledge wasn't up to the task of dealing with revenues on such a large scale."
I can totally believe it. I'm sure most people feel the same, but filing tax is terrifying because, again, countries care nothing more than taking money from you, right? We all know that. And there's so many warnings on the page of be accurate, do not lie, etc., right? It's even though for me I make, peanuts, it's always terrifying to feel the fucking thing. There's so many fucking pages and you're afraid of making a single mistake and they're gonna come after you. It's crazy how much it feels like in a state situation, yeah. Obviously when you're a company of the size of, Gainax, Eva was 95, 97, they released the end of Eva. Come on. You had more than enough time to hire professionals for stuff like that. I don't know. Come on.
And all of this is very serious stuff, but that quote is kind of funny, you gotta admit. I don't know, maybe don't run a major company if you just kind of forget how to do taxes sometimes. Maybe hire an accountant with the millions of dollars you are hoarding. Just a thought. But that's not even where it ends. From 2000 to 2016, Gainax would face a whole heap of lawsuits, including breach of contract and failure to pay
I mean, they basically never came back, right? I know obviously left, he did a bunch of live action stuff, then he made Studio Calab where he made the rebuild of Evangelion for like bloody like 15 years or something. And he also made like live action stuff like, you know, the Cutie Oni, Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, Shin Kamen Rider.
100 million yen in royalties to Hideaki Anno after he formed another studio in 2006. Then in 2016, Gainax's headquarters moved and were reportedly being run out of a 45-year-old two-bedroom apartment in Tokyo. I swear I'm not making that up, though it is very hard to find verification.
What were they even doing all this time again? I guess merchandising and all that, because again, they didn't make any anime after, I think Karekano was the last one.
Viable sources for that information. And the darkest part of all, in 2018, Gainax's new president, Tomohiro Maki, was sentenced to 3 years in jail for indecent acts. Now, I won't ruin this anime titty video by talking about what he did. You can look that up for yourself. It's pretty bad, but somewhat fortunate by talking about what he did. You can look that up for yourself. It's pretty
Arrested for alleged indecent assault of teenager.
bad, but somewhat fortunately, a ray of sunshine was starting to form over the dumpster fire that Gainax turned into. And that ray of sunshine is Studio Trigger.
That's right, I keep forgetting, yeah. A lot of the Gainax talent went to Trigger and there was another studio, I forget the name. And I'm guessing it's getting to Kill la Kill.
And also Kara, Hideaki Anno's new studio, but this is a video about anime boobs, not Evangelion. Trigger was founded in 2011 by former Gainax employees Hiroyuki Imaishi and Masahiko Utsuka following their success on Gurren Lagann in 2007. And coming from a show about teenagers trying to fight God with mech robots.
Wait, Gainax did Gurren Lagann? I always forget. Okay, so I guess they still had a lot of gas left in the tank.
Robots and the power of friendship, Trigger carved out their personality from over-the-top ridiculous shows. The first of which being Kill la Kill.
I haven't watched it in so long, I never remember much from it.
Kill la Kill is the fan service show. That's the only way I can describe it. Over half a century of jiggling titties and panty shots have all led up to this one show. Kill la Kill is a shonen story following our female protagonist, Ryuko Matoi.
I could agree, because again, the separation between a fanservice show and an ecchi show, yeah. There's still like a separation.
As she searches for her father's killer by enrolling in the prestigious and militaristic Hanoji Academy. The school's leader is the fearsome Satsuki Kiryuin.
Yeah, it's a weird name.
The school's leader is the fearsome Satsuki Kiryuin, who Ryuko challenges in order to learn the truth. This leads to various members of the school getting in Ryuko's way, who she must defeat to work her way up to finally confronting Satsuki. And all of this is typical shonen. The plot on its surface level is not any different to your typical male-centric battle shows. What separates Kill la Kill is everything other than that surface level plot. The way that powers work in Kill la Kill is entirely based on clothing. People have things called life fibers sewn into their outfits that give the wearer superhuman abilities. And Ryuko finds a special sentient piece of life fiber clothing called a kamui that gives her shonen protagonist level strength when she goes through a transformation from an ordinary schoolgirl into this.
Music is so good.
Now this is a lot. It's a magical girl transformation very similar to Cutie Honey from back in 1973. And just like Cutie Honey, the magical girl genre that previously existed in shows for girls is being brought into a shonen with much more nudity. Much more nudity. And that's the point.
Which is interesting, because again, it's been a long time since I've seen the show, but I don't remember it being that extreme. But again, maybe my memory is shot, but yeah. I never remember Kill la Kill being like... I mean, I don't remember much from it. But I just don't remember it being that extreme in terms of nudity as he's talking about, but I definitely need to rewatch it. It's been at least 10 years.
Points. Because a lot of people, when they first see Ryoko's transformation, or Satsuki's transformation since she has similar powers, are immediately taken aback by how ridiculous it all is. These are teenage girls. They're fighting in outfits that make lingerie look like a burqa in the most ridiculous, over-the-top battle sequences that show off every part of their body that the animators can think of. This must obviously be a show for horny men and nothing more than that. Except it is more than that. Kill la Kill is purposefully overloading the sexualization. Even outside of the main character's outfits, you've got constant sex jokes and ridiculous camera angles and an entire faction of people that are literal nudists. That is blatantly insane. But even more than, say, Food Wars, which uses the fan service as part of the plot, Kill la Kill is a plot about fan service. It's literally about all this.
Frankly, I don't remember enough about the show to the point I don't remember much of like any of the commentary it was doing. Like generally in my head, all I remember is some cool fights, great music, the kind of shipping I had between the two main characters, right? The rival Yuri, I guess. The mom of Satsuki, I think. She was kind of crazy. That's kind of like the only thing I can remember. Yeah.
Sexualization is the main story. The powers in Kill la Kill all revolve around clothing, and the way in which the main character overcomes other people's powerful clothes is by fighting in basically the nude in her kamui. She's initially forced into wearing it because it's sentient and attaches to her against her will. Throughout the show, however, she bonds with it and starts using it of her own volition. She becomes empowered by it. The main villain, on the other hand, wants everyone to wear specific clothing as a form of control. This clothing is the tool in which they exert their power over others by giving them abilities through the life fibers, but also taking away their free will. And the main faction of people fighting this oppression are literal nudists. They shun the clothes and their oppression, instead becoming empowered by their lack of clothing. And if any of this isn't coming together yet, the title of the show, Kill la Kill, comes from Japanese wordplay on how the words for wearing clothes and killing someone are pronounced the same. Kill la Kill literally translates to dressed to kill. Going even more in depth, Kill la Kill's protagonist is a young schoolgirl. Her kamui normally takes the form of a sarafuku, a traditional Japanese school uniform that represents female youth, and she can only transform
She's got a very delinquent type of self-form
into her empowered, sexualized form with a sacrifice of some of her blood. Ryuko and Satsuki literally bleed in order to transform into sexy, mature versions of themselves. If you don't think that's an obvious metaphor for puberty and womanhood, I don't think we're watching the same show.
I mean, there's frankly a lot more than that, right? The commentary on like the way, I know in Japan they often have uniform, right? Which is like a way to push conformity. It's not just uniform, right? Like hairstyle too, hair color. I mean, just making everybody into like, as little individuality as possible. Clearly there's a lot going on here. I should rewatch the show. Like the 1,000 other show I should. Sometimes I hate the fact that I watched so many great shows when I was young, and not at the point where like I dug deep into understanding this show. For me, when I was younger, I watched show for like the fun of it, right? And I didn't really think, or I wasn't able to think too much about like the behind the scene commentary that he was trying to do. Like the first time I watched One Piece, I was more into the cool world, the cool fight, and it's like later that I start realizing the insane amount of commentary that it has. And it's kind of the same, but a lot of anime I watched when I was still like, I don't know, like under 16 or something. A lot of them I enjoyed for a reason, but I missed a lot of what it was trying to say or to do. So like on one side I wish, I could watch them fresh now, which in a sense I could, because if I rewatch them now, they might be a totally different experience. I've had that before, But yeah.
And going even more in depth, you can talk about the show's use of fan service. The show is painfully aware of how fan service can take power away from characters and uses that as part of the story. The fan service isn't meant to take away their power. They are wearing these outfits purposefully. They are aware of their sexualization and draw power through it. And anytime the women are sexualized without their consent, it is very clearly used as a tool against them. It is meant to shame them, and they're meant to overcome that.
それを俗な価値基準で走るなどまさに己の小ささの証明この桐生にさつき我が野望成就のためならば天下に乳房をさらそうと恥もなければひるみもない
Whereas again, going back to Fire Force, every element of fan service with Tamaki is against her will.
But again, for me, it's part of the thing of like, not everything can be a kill like kill, not everything can be a masterpiece. With this level of thought put into it, we all wish it was the case, right? And it's totally fine to say that Tamaki and the way Fire Force does it is bad, but watching that show, even though I've only watched season 1, you know, it feels like, you know, it doesn't really matter because it's one of the not very good elements, but you know, most shows have not very good elements. Something like Kill again is, you know, one of those very classic, mostly known as like a 10 out of 10 show, right? But most shows like Fire Force are definitely not even close to that. So they have some faux pas, and one of the classic ones is definitely, you know, stuff like this.
It is constantly being used against her, and as such, severely undermines her character. In Kill la Kill, there is no attempt to use the fan service to reduce the female characters to sex objects, and the show is very careful in making you aware of that. So the whole of Kill...
I don't know if everybody would agree with that. I mean, you know, I know this is, like, this might be the popular view of the fanservice in Kill la Kill, but I can tell you that there's probably a massive amount of people who totally don't see it that way.
Kill la Kill, even further than being about clothing, is a show about female empowerment. It's about young girls becoming women and choosing to take power from their sexualization instead of letting it control them. And it's a show about fan service. It's a satire of the entire trope and a story about its use in media. Trigger is very explicitly questioning the audience's motivation for watching lewd scenes. It's pointing the spotlight at you to ask you why you enjoy this. It's fun to watch Satsuki fight.
Because I'm horny. Most of the time, that's probably the answer, right?
In her ridiculous outfit, and yet when she's getting sexually assaulted by her mother, suddenly all the nudity isn't that appealing. I mean, it doesn't...
I'm not saying anything, but yeah. I think you don't understand the depths of some people's fetishes.
Get more obvious than the fact that every time Ryoko transforms or does something lewd, there's a giant crowd of men cheering it on and getting nosebleeds. That's supposed to be you, motherfucker. They're making fun of you.
It's fine, I mean, I am the type of people who doesn't get nosebleeds, so I'm good. I'm not like them. I'm good.
All of Kill la Kill uses fan service not just as a plot device or set dressing, but as a storytelling method. Because without the prominence of fan service in anime and pop culture, you couldn't have a story that's so expertly told using it. And without...
I mean, again, it doesn't need to be this high level either, right? Like I was talking about Dress Up Darling earlier, and, you know, the show is about, like, this extroverted girl who's very hot, who's really into herself being hot, you know, she takes care of herself. She's really into cosplay. So the culture of, you know, anime cosplay, which is often with very revealing outfits, it's something she's into. So like, there's a lot of story reason for her being in a lot of fan service scene in the show, right? First, because she's trying to appeal to the guy she's into, right? Like, sometimes she does it not directly, but sometimes, yeah, she's trying to show off to him. Also, again, like, the fan service scene are like, you know, totally relevant to the plot, right? I mean, she's doing a cosplay of a fan service character. You know, it's like, it's not deep like the commentary of Kill la Kill, but there's reason for it. It's hard to complain, you know? I mean, whether she's, you know, showing her chest or she's putting her feet on him, like that one scene, right? There's a logic to it, right? I mean, she's trying to get a reaction out of him. It's in character.
Knowing some of the history of fan service like I've covered, I don't really think you could appreciate it in Kill la Kill, because the plot is actually part of the plot. So for anyone interested in deeper discussion of the show and its use of fan service, I'd highly recommend this 4-part video series on Kill la Kill by Study of Swords. It goes into a lot more depth than I could, so I'll link it
If I rewatch the show, I would watch something like that, yeah.
in the description. So with this video, I think I've looked at every possible angle I could cover fan service in anime from.
I mean, I would say not really. I think you will see, it seems like he's avoided some topic that people often bring up, right? Stuff like, the sexual assault fan service, which is fucked up. The fact that majority of anime characters are underage. And so then it gets into the other topic of, does it even matter, the freaking like anime character? But the fact is that most fan service is for underage character, etc, right? The fact that a lot of anime is for younger boys, the objectification of women with the fan service, making them maybe messed up in the brain in how they're gonna act with real life women. I mean, there's so many subjects you could go into, which are pretty interesting, but again, videos could be hours long.
We've looked at its history, where it came from, and why it's so popular. And we've seen some bad and great examples to help us understand if it can be used well or not. And hopefully this all highlights the complexity of the topic. Fan service might just be boobs and butts and horny manga authors on the surface, but it can be so much more than that. And like any element in a piece of media, its inclusion and how it's used are very important. Because there are a lot of shows that do not use fan service well at all. They have characters that just exist to get the audience horny.
I mean, I don't like that you're using Dragon Maid, because I love Dragon Maid and I love the fan service in Dragon Maid. Even though, sure, I mean, like even then, like, I don't know, you could argue that there's some freaking thematic thing to it, right? Like, Lukua is, she's a dragon goddess kind of thing, right? And she was summoned by this Shota, and she's just, messing with him by being good. I mean, it's in character, and she's not, I mean, having watched the show, I feel like she's not just a fan service character, right? She's kind of like well, she does that, she's also like the motherly voice in the show, who gives like, was pretty serious scene that work very well, where she gives some pretty good advice to the character about relationship, family, and stuff like that. So, frankly, I know a lot of people don't like Dragon Maid, but for me it's not bad at all. I mean, I would call this a good example of fan service, not on the highest level, right? I mean, it's not that deep, but I like the joke.
Or awful intrusive bits that deflate the whole scene. Pandering beach episodes, or characters getting perved on, or a girl slipping and falling pussy first onto the main character's face.
I mean, same thing with like Mushoku Tensei, right? Like, Rudeus being a pervert is part of the plot, right? He's a piece of shit, maybe an actual pedo in real life. That was the thing, right? Like in real life, in the normal world he was in before the isekai, right? That's literally part of his character. And in this new world, part of the story is him maybe trying to be a better person, but there's still element of him being a piece of shit, right? Like the way he was, I mean, he didn't really try to assault anyone per se, but still, right? I think that's part of the interesting aspect of it. But the Mushoku Tensei discussion goes deep,
Or just characters that are clearly not adults getting sexualized.
Which again, like, this is what most people, I think, have a problem with, which is true, because the majority of anime characters are like high school. That tends to be the most classic. As I always say, I have no problem with it. It's freaking anime character, right? I don't mind it.
Like, I am of the firm belief that you should just mentally increase the age of any anime character by like 3 years, because it'll make the show better. Ain't no way that Okabe, this scruffy looking college dude, is meant to be 18. This man is clearly like 25. But hey,
I mean, our style, I guess.
Sometimes these are just children you're showing me. That is a fucking child.
It's a lady, yeah.
I don't care if age is just a number. That number is 911. You should be in fucking prison.
We got him.
I don't think...
You should make a video about Lily. It's kind of research would be interesting.
fan service will ever go away. And I think instead of people complaining online about this has too much or this show is ruined because of it, we should...
I mean, again, it's the same with like TV shows, movies. I mean, there's always like odd character being hurt and, you know, fan service in them. I mean, of course it's not gonna go away, except if like humanity stop being horny, but then we're just gonna die.
Instead ask ourselves, how could it be done better? It's fine to include adult content and sexuality, you just have to include it in a good way. You know, make sure the fan service fits the story and its characters. If you want to be lighthearted, add all the sex jokes and pervy moments you want, but if you want to be serious and dark, get the boob jokes the fuck away from there. Or just make the whole tone of the show adult so no single character feels like their inclusion is just for eye candy. Include adult themes or nudity into the plot, or include it in the storytelling in some way. If you're already gonna show me bouncing boobs, you can at least make them feel not out of place. I don't want the show feeling like it's made for 12-year-olds up until the moment you show me softcore porn. Nobody was about to recommend interspecies reviewers before they saw a titty. What that
It's a great show though, like, but also it's not a fan service show, I don't think. Again, I mean, I don't know if everybody look at it the same thing, but interspecies reviewer, High School of the Dead, High School DxD, the Eishi shows are not fan service show, right? It's not the same. You know, for me, there's a big difference between that. Where like a normal show with fan service, you know, it has a lot of other goals, you know, it might be a shonen battle or something, but for Eishi, the majority of the goal of the show is to do lewd stuff. So it's very different, I feel like, you know, it's very different.
tells me is that the fan service doesn't fit. It feels out of place in the show. You've got to match the level of maturity, or else don't consider putting the fan service in there in the first place. And I think on the other side of this, a lot of people in the anime community need to stop being so immature when it comes to this stuff. It can be pretty insane the amount of mental gymnastics people pull to try and convince themselves that titties in television are inherently shameful.
Yeah. Again, I mean, you know, especially in recent years with anime being even more popular, there's people constantly complaining about it, right? And there's some arguments that are interesting, again, but some people really like go too far in, acting like they're basically like a Catholic nun, you know?
Anime is trash and so am I argument people make to try and infer that every show with nudity in it is dumb male pandering is awful. I hate it. Because no, just the process of showing skin does not preclude an anime from being good or enjoyable for other reasons or even intellectual. It just means that it showed skin. That's it. A show can be thoughtful and engaging and full of deeper meaning and also show nudity, and those two elements can exist.
But what is the meaning of the dicks that you see all the time in Game of Thrones? What is the meaning of flaccid dicks? That's my biggest question. I remember in South Park, they have like a parody of Game of Thrones, and they make the point that they always show flaccid dicks, and I think it was that they only show gay men flaccid dicks. What was the thematic commentary of that? Someone needs to explain to me. Yeah. But actually, in the Night of the Seven Kingdom, the guy was straight, I guess. But it was a Norse dick, so...
Entirely separate from one another. I think the anime community really needs to look into fan service if we want shows to improve, because the main thing I see holding it back right now is the collective immaturity that we have towards it. People are...
But you can't solve this. I mean, again, it's the same thing with isekai. Like, they're so trash, there's so many terrible ones, like 9 out of 10 shows being adapted to isekai are just the worst thing you've ever seen. But a lot of people like them, right? It's a lot of, probably, I'm gonna assume, young boys, which are the target audience, and they're loving it no matter how bad it is. And that's the same thing, right? Like, you know, why would authors stop putting stuff like that into their work? You know, it's also pretty easy to assume that a lot of authors who join something like Shonen Magazine, they don't care that much about any fan service, but they know it's almost like needed. That's part of like the package that's expected, and so that's why they don't really do anything that interesting with it. They just put the quota of, you know, boobs and ass. You know, I don't think any kind of conversation people are gonna have is gonna change that, because, you know, the target audience for a lot of like the show that have this kind of basic fan service, you know, if we're talking about many shonen stuff, it's not gonna change, right? You know, the only thing for things to work better is maybe having like potentially more seinen anime, which might be about like, you know, more mature topic and, you know, sexualized topic, but in a seinen context, there's more chance that they might be commented on in a more interesting way, right? I guess. I'm trying to think of an example right now, but I'm struggling. Yeah.
On both the creators and the viewer side, still treat nudity and sexual content with way less thought than it deserves, which leads to these elements never being able to be explored or expanded on fully more than the childish ways they're used in shows like Fire Force. All fan service and sexuality and nudity are, at the end of the day, are elements to a story. And like every other element, you can use them better and make them more enjoyable. You can fit them in and give them importance, and you can make them a positive part of the experience, not an inherently negative one. You just have to put some thought into it. So instead of turning away shows just because they have fan service, think of how easily we could be recommending them because they have good fan service. I mean, who doesn't like anime boobs?
Good video, yeah. I would still say that this really, it's a good video, but there's still like a lot more like branch of this discussion that you could go into. But still a good one. I enjoyed it, and I gave you my thoughts on all of this. Again, you know, I'm not the best to talk about all this because again, I've watched so much anime and I've gotten so used to it that a lot of the time, even if some fan service is really bad, I just don't even care, right? Because again, for me, I look at it as in the same way that there's a lot of scene that might be really bad in a show. Fan service is just like one type, you know, like there might be a bad fight, a bad exposition scene, a bad comedy scene, you know, and usually like it's not a big of a deal enough that if I enjoy the rest of the show, I just forget about that scene and move on, right? It's not that big of a deal for me. Yeah. I don't know. There's endless conversation about all this, which is pretty interesting, yeah. I mean, again, all these topics are interesting. It's just most people look at it as jokes, right? That's about it, yeah. Okay, great video. This guy really makes great video. I'm glad I found this channel. So, next we have anime waifus, which I'd say is somewhat connected. Let's see what his commentary on anime waifu can be.
I've been a fan of anime for a long time. I find it to be one of the most expressive and interesting forms of media currently in existence, being capable of beautiful visuals, complex characters, and stories that I can honestly say have changed my life. And yet, it gets a bad rap. Though anime is more mainstream than ever, there are still parts of the community that have a massive stigma around them. Parts that are dismissed as weird, despite people not even knowing where they came from. In a previous video, I covered fan service, both its history and its relationship with the media it's a part of. And while that video was titled A Deep Dive, it may as well have been into a kiddie pool compared to the ocean I found myself lost in trying to research what I'm talking about today. I have read novels, dug up decades-old forum posts, and studied anthropological papers, all centered around one topic, all trying to answer one question. Why do people like waifus so much?
It's another one where like I feel like there's such an easy answer, right? I mean, you know, characters, interesting characters, odd characters, characters with great stories, characters you can relate to. Yeah. I mean, husbando is the same, right? Nice song, man. Deep dive. Over 1 hour this video, so Definitely a deep dive, yeah.
To those unfamiliar, the word waifu is a Japanese borrowing of the English word wife. In Japan, a lot of the time, when there's no Japanese word to describe something, they'll use what's called loanwords, where they just take a word from another language and adapt it phonetically into Japanese. Other common loanwords are convenience stores being called konbinis, and my favorite, professional wrestling being called puroresu. The word itself dates back to the 80s, when the common Japanese word for one's wife at the time was kanai, which literally translated to inside the house. It said the younger generation at that time were upset by how that sounded, and so came up with the word waifu as a more neutral alternative. However, the term did not receive its association with anime until around 2002, with the show Azumanga Daioh. Azumanga Daioh is a comedy anime about this ensemble cast.
It's one of the few classic cute girl anime I haven't seen. As a big fan of the cute girl doing cute things genre, I have watched most of the big one, like 90% of them. Azumanga Daioh, I've only seen 2 or 3 episodes so far.
Of schoolgirls in their everyday lives. Episode 15 of the show, the one important to this conversation, is a classic sports festival episode. And in one scene early on in the episode, the girls are discussing what events they'll be participating in and what costumes they should wear for the big cheerleading event. And, well, this happens.
それには一つ提案がありまして。今回はこの不思議なバトンがポイントでして。
なんだ？女の人の写真。綺麗な人やな。誰？
My waifu.
My waifu.
Now, the usage of waifu here is completely normal, or at least it's used in normal context. A character is referring to their wife, and they use the word waifu. But it is from here that we can directly trace the lineage of waifu to the larger anime community.
I didn't know. Azumanga Daioh is pretty influential. I think there's a couple other memes from it that are still very big.
As a lot of people began to use the phrase
My waifu
as a sort of meme phrase that eventually became the popular title for one's favorite character.
I didn't even know this was so recent, 24 years ago, yeah.
Also, just for fun, here's the English dub of that very same scene for comparison. Mostly just because they use the regular English word wife, which I think ruins the joke.
It's a photo of a woman. She's a real pretty lady. Who is it?
My wife.
The spread of the term waifu from Azumanga Daioh then came primarily in the form of anime fans on online forums, 4chan's /A anime forum being the most popular. It's hard to find any exact references or archives of anything posted right after that episode, since a lot of archives don't go back that far, and browsing 4chan this much has already put me on an FBI watch list. But I did uncover some archive posts on 4chan from 2008 where people talked about waifus in different contexts and even used the exact phrase.
I didn't even know you could do that. Like, the main reason I hate 4chan is that sometimes I'm looking for something and like a result ends up being 4chan, but it's like from a couple years ago. I click on it and it says like dead or archived and you can't even read the thread. Maybe I don't know how to use 4chan, but from what I understand, even stuff from like 6 months ago might not be readable anymore or something, which is really annoying. Especially when you're looking for like a specific info or something, and again the page shows up but you can't look at it.
My waifu to refer to their favorite character. The earliest post I could find online was actually on the Anime Suki forum from 2006, which uses it in a thread talking about characters from Rosen Maid. And it's around 2007 that the first entry for waifu was put into Urban Dictionary. According to all this, plus Google Trends graphs showing the term's popularity starting around 2007, it's safe to say that that's when waifu, as we know it, took off. Interestingly enough, it's also in 2007 that the oldest archived usage of husbando was recorded, in reference to lock-on from Mobile Suit Gundam Zero.
Husbando, yeah, what is the origin of that one?
Bondo, as you can imagine, is just the male equivalent to waifu, so discussion about it is mostly the same, and I won't really be talking about the differences since
Wait, so was there like a show that popularized it the same way?
this video is long enough as it is. So waifu was popularized as a term in 2007, and its usage hasn't changed much at all since then. It just became more and more popular and well known, to the point that it actually stopped being a term for one's real wife entirely and became solely used to refer to fictional characters.
I mean, if I had a wife, I would call her my waifu. I feel like otherwise your wife would be pretty mad. No?
Along with another term, orinayome, which also means my wife and is used in Japanese a bit more often. Anyways, while the meaning of waifu remained loosely as a fictional character I like, the usage of it online became heavily split, with even those early 4chan posts being half ironic uses of the word and half sincere. It wasn't uncommon.
I do say something like this character is my waifu, but for me it's more like just saying that's my favorite character of the show or something. Like I don't have a single waifu of any overall like all anime. So for me, when I say it, it's more like, yeah, like equivalent to Oshi, you know, just my favorite. Yeah.
Common for someone to post a picture of some random person or character with the caption "my waifu," and this ironic association of the word does lead to some confusion and mystification surrounding those who are sincere. A good example being the subreddit r/waifuism, where people post about characters they are actually in love with and show themselves going on dates with them or buying merchandise related to them. Now, some people might want to believe that these are all ironic posts.
Definitely not. I almost became a bit like that early into my anime journey, like a long time ago, early 2010s. I watched Spice and Wolf, and I got really enamored with Odo, the main girl, to the point where I genuinely felt like I was like in love with her. And you know, I've always been somewhat self-aware, so I was like feeling that and thinking that it's utterly stupid and kind of insane. But I was really into the character for like a year or two. Not that I would do anything like that, right? But you know, she was by far my favorite character for a bit. Eventually, you know, time passed, I grew up, and I don't think I've ever felt like that for an anime character before, right? I haven't felt again like that for an anime character, but yeah, I remember like, you know, really like having that weird feeling of wanting to be Lawrence, the main character guy, and just traveling with her and having romance and all that. It's very cringe thinking back on it. I was like 14 at best, maybe a bit younger, so give me a break. But yeah, that's the only time I remember something like that, yeah. And I can understand that some people, I guess, they feel this once and they just fully fall into it, right? Especially if, again, you don't have any real life relationship ever coming your way. It's probably even easier to like fall into this and stay into this.
That it's all one big bit that 50,000 people are somehow participating in, and that nobody could possibly develop real feelings for an anime character. But I'm here to tell you that that's just not true. Many people have genuine feelings for fictional characters. Even outside the thousands on Reddit, there are most likely millions of people worldwide who would say they have something that you could call a waifu. So I want this video to be a record of waifu culture. I want to cover the entire...
I mean, waifu culture is probably not just tied to anime, right? I'm sure, like, if you go back in time, what are some of the oldest stories? Maybe the Epic of Gilgamesh. I'm sure someone back then who read it, you know, Gilgamesh was the husband though. Like, I'm sure people's having extreme feelings towards fictional characters has been a thing for as long as people have enjoyed stories. Let's be real, like, it's just a very human thing.
History and everything that led up to our modern understanding of it. Not only to try and explain how this all started, but also why someone could develop feelings towards an anime girl. And in talking about all this, we can understand the ways people consume media even today. Just a quick plug before we begin though, this video has had some censorship to avoid demonetization on YouTube. If you'd like an uncensored version, go check that out at patreon.com/Lextorious. And with that out of the way, this video is long and in-depth and took me way too much time to make. So just buckle up, grab a snack, and get comfortable.
But it's why it's good though. Actually, I'll take a quick break here before we continue. Get something else to drink. So give me 5 minutes and then we'll watch this properly. Yeah, coming back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry for the wait. So let's continue.
Because the first stop in our journey takes us all the way back to the 1970s.
Still need to watch this. The remake. Was she really the first anime waifu? No way.
Urusei Yatsura is a manga series written by Rumiko Takahashi that began serialization in 1978, receiving an anime adaptation in 1981 and a remake anime in 2022, which I guess makes this the perfect time to talk about it. The show follows a flirtatious high school student by the name of Ataru, who is, and stay with me for a moment, chosen as Earth's champion by an invading alien race, where he must win a game of tag to save the planet. And the aliens champion for this game just so happens to be a cute girl with colorful hair named Lum. To keep things brief, Ataru wins the game by stealing Lum's bikini top, then loudly asks his girlfriend Shinobu to marry him. However, Lum thinks he's asking to marry her, and so now this loser high schooler has a cute alien girl desperately trying to get with him, while he tries to live a normal life, with Urusei Yatsura being roughly translated to those annoying aliens. Looking at Lum, you can see a character designed to be incredibly cute and vibrant, put into a situation where she is uncontrollably attracted to the plain male lead. Her personality is also a combination of cute displays of affection alongside outbursts of comedic violence whenever Ataru is unfaithful to her, with their whole dynamic being a parody of Japanese married couples.
I didn't even know that the main character of this was like that. It really shows that this way of writing this kind of like loser gets really lucky and gets an amazing girl. Fantasy has been a thing for such a long time, I mean. And also this is written by a woman, which is a bit more interesting. But you know, like most of them I get annoyed with these days. The kind of like loser guy and super interesting girl, right? I prefer when the guy is an actual character and is actually like interesting in his own way. But seeing this, I guess it's been a long time like this.
The entire premise of the show is pretty blatant wish fulfillment, something that would later transform into the modern harem anime, a genre in which a male protagonist is stuck in some fantastical situation where multiple attractive women want to date him. And with this fantasy, plus Lum's bubbly personality and the fact she only ever really wears a bikini, many fans began to like her. She was dubbed the first otaku dream girl by Jason Thompson in their book Manga The Complete Guide, and this otaku dream girl moniker is almost certainly used simply because she predates the phrase waifu by several decades. To comment on her influence a bit more, I'll refer to Comic-Con organizer Ichikawa Koichi, who says Urusei Yatsura had the first harem, and the character Lumchan. She was a super sex symbol in Japan, what movie stars are to France and America, and was my first love.
Crazy, I mean, right away we're learning some context I didn't know. The first kind of like popular anime harem made by a woman. I did not know that. I did not expect that.
However, love is a limiting word to describe what most people feel towards characters like Lum. While it might suit someone like Koichi, lots of anime fans are more familiar with another term, moe. Moe, possibly even more so than waifu, is a very hard word to describe. The most apt definition I found is from Patrick W. Galbraith's book, The Moe Manifesto, where he calls it an affectionate response to fictional characters. Basically, moe just refers to
which is interesting because maybe it's just me and I'm the problem, but I started using moe even for real people. Like, yeah. But I definitely use it for cute. Yeah.
Any feelings you'd have towards a character you like. The feelings themselves can be a wide array of things, from excitement to attraction to wanting to protect and nurture. A good 90% of the time it's just some variation of cute, but to say moe means cute would be vastly oversimplifying. As just an example,
何その姉への絶対的な信頼並大抵じゃないなマジ鬼がかってんぞ
Did watching that clip make you feel something? Congratulations, you just felt moe. And if you felt nothing watching it, You should already be able to see how this concept is related to waifu culture. After all, moe explicitly refers to feelings for a fictional character. It cannot apply to real people. So to understand those feelings is to understand waifus. But while the concept is already a bit hard to explain, the history is even more convoluted. In fact, the complicated nature of moe is apparent from just the origins of the term itself, because the etymology of the word is actually somewhat unknown. We know how the word probably came to be, but nothing concrete. The most common theory comes from psychologists Tamaki Saito and Ken Kitabayashi, who identify it as stemming from the Japanese word moeru, which means to burn. As the story goes, otaku in the late 90s were trying to use the word to describe their burning passion for a character, but were continually autocorrected to another Japanese word meaning to bud or sprout, which was also pronounced moeru. Thus, moe came into being as a slang term referring to both budding feelings and burning passion. However, regardless of the word's origin, the first uses of the word, like waifu, date back to early internet forums, this time going all the way back to the 90s with online message board 2channel. And I'm not even going to try to find you any examples of it being used there. I don't speak Japanese. But in another paper written by Galbraith, he describes a story about how the term came into popularity in Japan. He says, quote, "The word entered the popular lexicon with Densha Otoko, an otaku who saves a woman from being by a drunk man on the
yes. There was a manga adaptation of this. Yes.
train, and with advice from his fellows on 2channel, successfully courts her. Densha's story was collaboratively created on 2channel on a board for single men between March and May 2004, and became an internet book, a film, a primetime TV show, 4 manga series, and an erotic video. The last episode of the drama, aired in prime time on Fuji TV in 2005, was viewed by 25.5% of the national audience. The protagonist's dreamy recitation of moe became a media phenomenon, encouraging emulation.
ギャルゲーやフィギュアを見たりイベントがある日はそっちに顔出したりギャルゲー美少女系のゲームですね実に萌えです萌え
This is pretty funny, I should watch it.
もう一度お願いします
萌え
And just like that, moe became one of the most popular slang words in all of Japan. However, just like waifu, while the term itself has a relatively recent history, the concept stems from much earlier. So let's go back to 1948. The history of moe actually begins with the manga Lost World by Osamu Tezuka, the creator of Astro Boy.
I was gonna say, like, a lot of the concept we talk about here, there always has to be some, like, early version with Tezuka, right? I mean, creating so much of the first manga stuff, the first character, and also, what most people know him for Astro Boy, he had so many mangas, so many different types of stories, from shonen to seinen, etc., right? So, he must have really always have, like, an origin or something.
In the sci-fi manga, a scientist creates genetically engineered females out of plant matter. Another scientist befriends one of these plant women, named Ayami, and the two of them are stranded in an alien world and decide to live as brother and sister. As Helen McCarthy, author of a number of reference books on manga and anime, writes on her blog, this is essential moe, an innocent, literally budding girl, a geeky young man with the heart of a hero, and protective instincts to do any father proud. Though it is important to note that while the relationship depicted in Lost World is very nurturing and familial, the female plant girl, Ayami, was also drawn to be physically attractive, because why not? And later, in the late 70s, the manga artist Hideo Azuma would take this a step further. As I mentioned in my fanservice video, shonen just means anime and manga made for boys, and features rougher, masculine characters. Shoujo just means anime and manga made for girls, and features smoother, feminine characters. What Hideo Azuma did was combine the rounded character bodies of Tezuka with the expressive faces associated with shoujo manga to create his own unique style called bishoujo, meaning beautiful girls. And these cuter characters in manga still primarily made for boys became a massive hit. However, bishoujo also represents a much bigger shift in the culture of manga than just art style. As in the 60s and 70s, there was a massive change in terms of gender dynamics and consumer practices. As sociologist Kimio Ito explains, In the 1960s, there had been huge social movements in Japan against wars in Asia and our security treaty with America. Going into the 1970s, there was a sense that young men had run out of steam. Even their manga weren't that interesting. On the other hand, girls' culture started to expand rapidly. Consumer culture was on the rise, and with it, so-called cute culture with Hello Kitty and fancy goods. This was also a time when shoujo manga was really maturing. The early 1970s was the peak of the shoujo manga scene in Japan, overshadowing anything going on in shonen manga. Men were searching for alternatives, and this is one of the things they found. So now, in the 70s, even male audiences were reading lots of shoujo with their more personal, emotional stories as compared to the high-octane epics of shonen. And bishoujo represents a sort of response to this. We're focused on appealing female characters for a male audience, while also maintaining that more female-oriented perspective. So for the same reason that this video focuses on moe, because it could help us understand feelings for fictional characters, the history is full of shoujo and bishoujo, because those are the genres that facilitate those feelings. Which is why the most common type of bishoujo media is bishoujo games, or as you might know them, dating games.
Sure.
Anyways, referring to Galbraith again, fans of bishoujo characters were among those manga and anime enthusiasts first labeled otaku. The columnist Nakamori Akio, writing in the subcultural magazine Manga Bariko in 1983, used the word otaku to mean something like geek or loser. Azuma Hideo is named explicitly in Nakamori's articles about otaku. And after Azuma, other artists would begin adopting the bishoujo style, one of the most famous examples being that of Hayao Miyazaki, with characters like Lana from Future Boy Conan and Clarice from the Castle of Cagliostro. However, the most famous character of the bishoujo boom, and the one who would go on to change the medium, was our good friend Lam.
I want someone to tell that to his face though, that he bought into the bishoujo style, with Miyazaki being such a contrarian to any trope and trappings of the medium. He probably wouldn't like hearing that.
Yes, Urusei Yatsura was not only the birthplace of the waifu, but the anime partly responsible for popularizing bishoujo as well as moe, as it was a particularly male-centric bishoujo manga entirely written and created by a female artist. The same one who would go on to make...
Recently I saw a video of Miko Takahashi and Junji Ito talking. It was a YouTube video, I think. It was pretty funny, yeah. I guess she has done some horror stuff too, but it was very interesting.
Like Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha. Lum's rounded, cute features and attractive appearance played into the bishoujo aesthetic perfectly, and her romance story with the protagonist massively popularized it within otaku culture. Not only that, but a defining trait of Lum's character is that she continually attacks Utaru as a display of affection, and this would become the birthplace of yet another popular anime trope called tsundere. In case you don't believe me, here's the rest of Koichi's quote from earlier. Urusei Yatsura had the first harem, and the character Lum-chan. Lum-chan is the source of moe, the queen. She's the first tsundere character. So following Lum's legacy, the bishoujo genre and its aesthetic would seep into the rest of the industry, and this developed in two major ways. In one, the typical male-centric shonen anime were beginning to add more pretty girls and romantic scenes. Most notably, the original Mobile Suit Gundam in 1979 featured a good number of female characters, and Macross in 1982 featured the fictional singer Lin Min Mei, whose romance with the male...
I mean, that's a big waifu. I feel like in Gundam, most of the girls were like less interesting. I mean, they're cute in their own way, and some of them become more interesting later, right? Like the sister of Chao. But yeah, in Macross, it's definitely much more the focus.
Lead makes up a large portion of the show. The other major development was that shoujo anime started adding elements to attract their new male viewers, leading up to 1992, when Sailor Moon would take off as a mix between the classic shoujo magical girl genre and the more action-packed Super Sentai. And if you don't know what Super Sentai is, it's just Power Rangers. Power Rangers is literally just re-edited scenes of Super Sentai with additional shots of teenagers in high school. In fact, Macross is a series about transforming robots designed by Shoji Kawamori, and his transforming car robot toys would later get rebranded and turned into the Transformers. So if you grew up at a certain time in the 90s, there's a good chance a lot of your childhood media is just reappropriated Japanese stuff. But unlike Transformers and Power Rangers, Sailor Moon was an explicitly Japanese media property that expanded into Western audiences. And though written by a woman for a female audience, it does focus more on action and shonen-type storylines, which made it even more popular among guys, all the while explicitly calling the main character a Bashoujo. I mean, it's in the original title, Bashoujo Senshi Sailor Moon. And due to Sailor Moon being so popular, I doubt anyone watching this video hasn't heard of it before. It is also one of the key contributors to moe in the mainstream, with anime columnist John Oplager even crediting the inception of the term as stemming from the name of Hotaru Tomoe, a particularly cute character in the show that audiences often wish to protect. From here, the use of moe to describe bashoujo characters grew more and more popular, with entire genres of anime, manga, and bashoujo games, all until a tipping point in 1995, with the release of a little-known anime called Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Of course, yeah. I say Eva also like same way there was some before, right? But I assume Eva is kind of like the tipping point for making tsundere and maybe kudere extremely popular and such a trope that, you know, so many shows start putting them in.
In my previous video on anime history, you'll know that Gainax, the studio behind Evangelion, is largely responsible for the popularity of fanservice, and so it should come as no surprise that they'd have a hand in the rise of waifus and moe as well. I mean, their first ever animation as a studio, the Daikon 3 and 4 fan films, both starred a distinctly bashoujo character. So moving forward to Evangelion, they would continue to carry that style. You see, Eva's story focuses on the protagonist, Shinji Ikari, who is a rather meek and mild-mannered teenager that's been thrust into saving the world. He learns he is possibly humanity's only hope in a battle against cosmic entities known as angels, and Shinji must pilot a mech robot to fight them alongside two other pilots named Rei Ayanami and Asuka Langley Soryu. Rei has this timid and cold personality, showing herself to be even more passive than Shinji at times, which is hard to accomplish considering a large part of his character is...
I mean, she's kind of like the ultimate coup dere, because there's very little dere, I guess.
Just him not wanting to do anything ever. But more than that, throughout the series, Rei is shown to have a motherly connection to him, in contrast to her childlike personality, which leads Shinji to continually defend and look after her. Meanwhile, Asuka is hot-headed and determined, which leads to her bullying Shinji and continually teasing him. And even when Asuka later grows to respect him, she remains antagonistic as a way to hide her vulnerability, which just leads to Shinji in turn repressing his budding feelings for her. In this way, Asuka and Rei showcase a split in the...
I'd say there's other waifu in the show. I mean, you know, Misato is a waifu, and also the blonde scientist woman, I forget her name, she's pretty good too.
Personality of the waifu, as personified by Lum Invader, where the cute, innocent side of Lum's personality is taken out and put into Rei, who embodies moe, a desire to protect and nurture, and the bold, arrogant side is taken out and put into Asuka, who embodies tsundere, a desire for passion and vulnerability. And both of these girls were written with a more intimate perspective that allowed further explorations of these archetypes, where the series goes in depth into their mental health and emotional states. A large portion of Eva is all of these characters confronting their own trauma and learning to develop relationships with each other. So it should come as no surprise that Hideaki Anno, the show's creator, has stated that he read female-written romance novels to better understand these characters and make them relatable, which just cements the influence of shoujo and the female perspective on waifu culture when the creator of two of the most impactful female characters cites female works as his inspiration. In fact, to say Evangelion's female leads had an impact on anime culture would be an understatement. To this day, both are consistently ranked in the top 5 of any popularity poll conducted on women in anime, and even just discussion of...
And then, I was just thinking about it, but the meta thing is that then, 10 years later, Hideaki Anno started making the rebuild of Evangelion, which is a series of movies kind of like retelling the story. And there's a new character called Mari, another waifu, and it's heavily theorized by people that she is very much based on his wife, because Evangelion in the first place is a very personal story for Anno, and the rebuild have a much more like optimistic look on things, as back in the original Evangelion he was very depressed, but then he got a wife and things were good, and so Mari, this new character, and the relationship to Shinji is very much based on his real waifu. So Mari is probably like the most meta waifu possible in anime history, I feel like.
Which character is better has sparked massive online debate. I'm
definitely much more of an Asuka guy. I like tsundere. I don't know if I would like to be with a tsundere in real life, but if we're talking about waifu, I like tsundere.
Dubbed as the original Waifu Wars, which should just go to show how well written and popular they both are. As a fun aside, Anna was once asked his opinion on which character he preferred more, to which he responded, "The truth is, I have no emotional attachment to Rei at all. In the midst of making Eva, I suddenly realized I had forgotten her very existence," which seems to...
I was actually gonna say that earlier, like, you know, when I think of Rei, you know, I like her as a character, but I don't remember her, you know, actually having that much interesting evolution in the show, right? Asuka is obviously the big deal in terms of like story.
Undermine everything I just said about how well written she is, but is also hilarious, so I'm gonna keep it in the video.
Yeah.
Yet despite Anno having somehow forgot he wrote one of them, both Rei and Asuka have been instrumental to Evangelion becoming one of the most successful media franchises ever
so
made, being worth an estimated $16 billion. Which makes it almost solely responsible for the rebirth of the anime industry in the late 90s, and the creation of the merchandise economy that Japan has now popularized. Just for reference, the Evangelion franchise is worth more than Game of Thrones, My Little Pony, and Minecraft put together. And all that for merchandise and pachinko machines.
I was gonna say, like, most of it is pachinko machine. But also the fact that, yeah, compared to those franchise, the thing with Evangelion is that they literally, like, sell the IP to anybody, right? So there's literally like Evangelion anything, right? Like even your shitty small gacha might be able to get an Eva collab because you just need to pay for it, and it's probably like not that crazy, right? That's how they make so much money. They just sell Evangelion like to everybody.
Partly featuring these two girls. As just one example of merchandise that started to be sold around this time, body pillows, the most commonly associated waifu item, became popular in the late 90s following Evangelion. As Dakimakura, these large hugging pillows, had existed in Japan for quite some time, just as orthopedic pillows existed in the West. So anime merchandisers got the bright idea to slap cute anime girls on the front of these pillows you were supposed to fall asleep with, and it turned out to be a match made in heaven. The massive financial revolution that Evangelion caused in Japan actually caused a major cultural shift in the perception towards moe and waifus, with Rei Ayanami alone being credited by many for starting what was dubbed the moe boom in Japan. Whereas before they were seen as geeks and losers, in only a few short years, otaku were becoming a driving force of Japanese culture and their economy, which you can see exemplified in the national popularity of Densha Otoko. However, the history directly following the moe boom needs just a bit more context, as under the surface of all these popular anime and cute waifus, something had been slowly shifting in the background. Before Evangelion, with the success of moe and bishoujo in the late 70s and 80s, a lot of creators and companies began to catch on to this newfound culture. And this would coincide with a massive economic boom in Japan, where they would essentially be launched into leading the world economy. And so, something interesting happened. The 1980s saw a blossoming of media and material targeting otaku, and this conditioned a pattern of consumption and culture. Eventually, the products began to be designed specifically to elicit an emotional response in the consumer, i.e. to include characters that would inspire moe. Manga scholar Ito Go argues that since the end of the 1980s, characters in anime, manga, and video games became so appealing that fans desired them even without stories. So somewhere along the way, as we just discussed, these characters became attractive to people, and so the stories they were a part of were being enjoyed for the characters first and the stories second. You were no longer a fan of Lum because you liked Urusei Yatsura, you were a fan of Urusei Yatsura because you liked Lum.
But what I haven't seen it was there even much story in Urusei Yatsura. I know it's very long, and I assume most of it is just random one episode comedy, right? You know, I'm a massive fan of the cute girl doing things genre, which a lot of people don't like because they will call it like there's no story, there's nothing happening. And it's often true, though at the same time, what do you call nothing happening, right? Like if I think of an episode of Non Beauty, what did they do? They went to school, they played a game with their like eraser, then they went to like watch some Firefly at night. That's probably the full episode, alongside a lot of cuteness in between. For a lot of people, that is trash. There's literally like nothing to it, no story, no character development. You know, for me, it's amazing. I absolutely love this kind of anime. It's really interesting, yeah.
book, Otaku Japan's Database Animals, literary critic Hiroki Azuma actually talks about this quite a bit. They say, as a result, instead of narratives creating characters, it has become a general strategy to create character settings first, followed by works and projects, including the stories.
Though, I mean, depending on where this is going, I totally agree that as much as I like many tropes, I like kudere, I like tsundere, I like yandere, they are also very much a detriment. As so many authors just take the basic definition of it, and that's all they do with the character, like literally nothing more to it. You know, even as far as backstory, right? You know that a tsundere is often a tsundere because they have potentially some trauma that makes them hide their feeling by being this outwardly antagonistic, and so they will literally take like this definition and write the most basic character possible. But at the same time, it's not an anime problem, right? I mean, you know, all form of media, movies, shows have that problem where they might not be as in your face, but character tropes are there all the time, right? The classic badass hero who loves his family, loves his country, is a former marine, and is a badass. You know, that's the equivalent of a tsundere trope. You know, like you know exactly what to expect from this boring character. It's literally like being written in the most generic way possible. You know.
Given this situation, the attractiveness of characters is more important than the degree of perfection of individual works, and the know-how for enhancing the attractiveness through the art of the moe element has rapidly accumulated. Basically, it doesn't matter how good your story is. All that you need to be successful is the ability to create a character that is, in some way, moe. But even further than that, Azuma points out that the characters as a whole aren't what's attractive to people. It's the individual characteristics, like big eyes or frilly skirts or certain personality types. This is what he means by the art of the moe element, and if you can figure out how to put as many of them as possible into a character, you've got a winner. So what all this leads back to is, well, I'll let...
There's a balance. I mean, it's not true. At least to me, a professional enjoyer of moe, it's not... It's definitely like more than that. Yeah, like it's a lot more complicated than that. You can't just pile up every trope. There is a logic to what combination of trope you can have. And also, even if you take the basic trope, you need to do more with it.
Galbraith explained. Azuma posits that a turning point came with Neon Genesis Evangelion, an immensely popular TV anime produced by Studio Gainax. Evangelion features a female character named Ayanami Rei, who became the single most popular and influential character in the history of otaku anime.
Is that true though? Like, they keep saying Rei is more popular, but I always thought Asuka was more popular? Interesting.
Fans still isolate parts of this character to amplify and re-articulate in fan-produced works to inspire moe. After the success of Ayanami, the focus shifted to fictional characters with moe traits in lieu of story. In works featuring these characters, the original work functions as a starting point, and the extended process of producing and consuming moe takes place among fans in online discussions and videos, fan-produced comics, cosplay, and figures. And this is very interesting, because it directly explains why words like moe and waifu all began on online forums. Fans of Evangelion or other waifu media would watch the show, feel moe from someone like Rei, and then continue to feel moe as they discussed their waifu online. Then the discussion of their waifu became almost more important to them than the show itself. They could just consume or create fanfiction and fan art about their waifu and get the same feeling as they did watching the show, if they had even seen it to begin with. Because of this, characters no longer needed to have backstory or...
It's kind of like the modern problem of LARPers, right? People who don't actually watch a show or play a game, but they act like they really like or understand a character.
Well-written personalities when fans could just fill in or change that information on their own. And the creators already knew to focus on adding moe elements over good characterization, so the era of moe following Evangelion started to head in a completely new direction.
日曜なんて大嫌いです。さてと。
Lucky style. Canada. The 2000s peak.
According According to Yahoo Japan, in 2003, the market for moe-related merchandise and media was 88 billion yen, which was 1/3 of the entire otaku market at the time. So there was now more incentive than ever to make not only more moe characters, but characters that were more moe. And as we know, somewhere between then and 2007, the term waifu was starting to be used, showing that sort of self-awareness of moe culture and cute girl media. So while tons of shows and studios were all cropping up during this time, and plenty of them were using waifus, to talk about them all would take hours. So I'm just going to focus on one studio that would exemplify the capitalization of moe and change the culture forever. A studio by the name of Kyoto Animation. Kyoto Animation was founded by married couple Yoko and Hideaki Hata in 1985. As Yoko and other housewives she knew began to paint additional cells for several shows on the...
That's right, I always forget, and frankly it's like that for a lot of studios, especially back then. For a long time when they started, they weren't making anime directly. They were like an assistant studio to other studio, right?
Their own time, which later developed into creating a studio based around support animation. And some of the shows that Yoko and her studio worked on include Astro Boy, SDF Macross, Akira, Evangelion, and you guessed it, Urusei Yatsura. And fun fact that I forgot to mention earlier, Hideaki Anno also worked as an animator on Urusei Yatsura.
Yeah, that's right. He worked, I watched it recently, he works with Mamoru Oshii, the guy behind the Ghost in the Shell movie. And what again, I haven't seen the show. From what I understand, like Mamoru Oshii really did a lot of weirdness with this show. It's a lot more of an experimental anime than you might think.
While founding Gainax. So like everything in the anime industry, it's all connected. However, Kyoto's reputation for amazing support work led to them later being contracted to make adaptations of visual novels like Air, Canon, and Clannad, all of which being stories that relied on cute girls with the most gigantic eyes you've ever seen being put into melodramatic situations, usually meant to make you cry. So naturally, they were all successful, and Kyoto would follow them up with even more cute shows, like Lucky Star, Clannad After Story, and The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. All three of these shows were massively successful in
But in the list so far, only Lucky Star, you could argue, is a show that generally focuses only on moe without much to the actual characters. I absolutely love Lucky Star, but let's be real, it is literally just comedy, otaku culture, cute girl hanging around talking about, Choco Colony for like 10 minutes. There's a few character moments or emotional moments, but it is generally a peak moe anime where there's not really much going on beyond that, while all of the Air adaptation or Adui actually have a lot more meat beyond just the moe.
Capturing this newly growing audience of moe-seeking anime fans, with Haruhi in particular being a cultural phenomena in Japan at the time. A poll in 2006 conducted by TV Asahi on the top anime of all time in Japan placed Haruhi in just 4th place, only behind Evangelion and Full Metal Alchemist, because of course Full Metal Alchemist was at the top of the list every goddamn time. Though Haruhi actually owes a lot of its success to viral marketing in the early 2000s, as the main ending theme for the series, Hari Hari Yukai, became one of the first viral dances that people would film themselves performing online. And so many clips of Haruhi were being posted to this new video sharing website called YouTube that the Japanese Copyright Administration had to step in and request they be taken down. So glad that doesn't happen anymore. And yet all of that massive success and cultural impact is still nothing compared to what Kyoto would release in 2009. K-On! Is a 4-panel manga series that was originally serialized.
I have been rewatching it for 2 months now, I think. Very slowly though. Never gets old, only gets better with time.
In Hubuncha's Manga Time Kurara magazine in 2007. And in 2009, the series would get an anime adaptation from our friends at Kyoto Animation.
Which is one of the, I might call it one of the top 10 craziest anime adaptations of all time. Because if you've never checked out the manga, it's a 4-koma, which, it's very, very like chibi, simple art style. Not very good art style, I would say. And 4-koma means like 4 panel in a page, and most of the joke, the story, is within this whole page. So every page is like a different scene, it's that kind of story. It's very basic, it's not very enjoyable, so that's why I would say it's like one of the top 10 craziest adaptation, because what the anime does to the source material it's just expanded so much beyond what it was. I mean, again, I read the manga and for me it's like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, you know? But K-On! As an anime is like a 10 out of 10. It's kind of crazy.
Lasting 39 episodes and 2 OVAs. Following 4 high school
one
girls as
movie.
they join a band club in order to prevent
Actually, I think there's more than 2 of
it
these.
from being shut down, the musical slice of life series featured all of the hallmarks of a typical moe show. All 4 of the girls are cute, they do cute things, they're in the genre of cute girls doing cute things. And that's it, just a regular show about high school girls who play musical instruments. K-On! Went on to become the highest-selling anime television series in Japanese history by Blu-ray sold, with 500,000 copies.
That is utterly ridiculous if you... I haven't really kept up with like the Blu-ray sales these days because they've started not mattering, especially in the 2020s, but I used to a decade ago. And to give you some idea, you know, some shows were considered to do good for like 5,000 sales, 5,000 Blu-ray sales, and most anime, even some that would get sequel, they would only get like 1, 2, 3,000 sales, right, for Blu-ray, and that was considered enough at least a good decade ago, right? So this is utterly ridiculous.
It would come in second place for most Blu-ray sold in Japan period, only behind Evangelion's first rebuild movie. The show's first and second album debuted at #1 in the Japanese top music charts, and 2 singles from those albums were certified platinum by the Japanese record industry. K-On! Would win the awards for Best Anime in the TV category, Best Voice Actor, Best Anime Episode, Best Female Character, Best Original Song, Best Voice Actor again, and Best Anime of 2009. K-On! Was so popular that in 2011, electric guitar sales in Japan reached a new all-time high, just from schoolgirls going out and buying instruments to emulate the show. And why was it so popular, might you ask? Does the show have a phenomenal storyline or deep and interesting characters like Evangelion? Was it revolutionary to the genre like Sailor Moon, or did it bring something new to the industry like Urusei Yatsura? Nope, it just has some really cute girls doing really cute things.
このお宮のあちこちに牛がいるでしょ。この牛の頭をこうやって撫でるとね、頭が良くなるって言われてるの。
And in fact, you can look no further than the K-On! Subreddit to see exactly why people like it, because all of the posts on there are just different gifs of cute things that happen in the anime, or fan art of the characters made to be even cuter. You want K-On! Girls as Overwatch characters? How about K-On! Girls as Michael Jackson? Or maybe K-On! Girls as Attack on Titan spoilers? K-On! Meets the NWA perhaps? What about one of the girls as 19th century expressionist painting The Scream? Just like we discussed before.
But again, I think like what's so interesting about K-On! Is that first, a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people think it's really boring. And it's the meme of like, it's just cute girl drinking tea. And again, I would say, yeah, like this kind of show is not for everybody. But again, there's an absolute science to something like K-On!, which is the peak of the moe anime, right? A show where again, it's mostly just girl barely playing music, drinking tea, eating cake, making jokes. It's the absolute peak of what slice of life is, and yet it makes character that you get attached to 1,000 times more than so many epic stories of, you know, like shonen stories, right? Where like it's epic stories of life and death and high stakes, and you know, characters who are like ultra unique, you know, this ultimate scientist girl or this ultimate that and this. You know, it's really like, I think, you know, some people will often be reductive about something like K-On!, but man, is it really something for what it does, right? I mean, I just have so much respect for like what it does again as an anime, as an adaptation of something that's so much lesser, I feel like.
Now the practice of sharing these characters online and putting them into situations that make you feel moe was more important than watching the show. The show was still good, I mean it won awards after all, but the plot or greater meaning was obviously put aside to focus on maximizing the cuteness of these girls. Which is exactly what Azuma was talking about. Shows that are built on characters first, and characters that are built on being as cute as possible. So it should come as no surprise that exactly 2 things happened following the success of K-On! K-On! One, a billion other shows jumped in line to copy the cute formula and try to recapture the magic, and two, these shows began to garner criticism for their over-reliance on moe. As John Opliger puts it, these characters no longer evoked moe feelings. They were literally moe characters. Characters that were the physical manifestations of the defining characteristics of the moe movement. They demanded notice and adoration from viewers, rather than passively earning adoration and protective feelings. In other words, these shows knew their appeal was cuteness. They knew that moe was the whole selling point, and that fans just wanted more of it to share online. And the criticism was that they shoved in as much as possible until it became overwhelming if you weren't into it. Now,
then just don't watch it. I mean, seriously, it's not that deep, right? I really am extremely into the genre. It is rare that I drop moe anime, though there's some that are just, again, it really doesn't work. But yeah, a lot of them are like forgettable, or they don't, again, have like the Q&A way of making things feel like it's another level of greatness. But it's a genre that I highly enjoy. It always makes me feel happy to watch, right? And do I really want anything from it, right? I don't need every story to be super deep, every character to be super deep. If I watch a show like that and I feel happy, then it's a freaking great show. I mean, seriously. In the same way, if you watch a shonen and it's like the 1000th shonen anime with like good guy main character who does his best to achieve his dream, I mean, on paper that's fucking boring. I mean, every shonen is like that, and yet you might really like that one. And if it makes you happy, let's go.
Some people may argue this criticism is a bit harsh, but just as an example, here's a clip.
ゆい、お前何にも分かってない。ミオを見てみろ。ミオほどメイド服姿が似合うやつなかなかいないぞ。黒のストッキング、純白のエプロン、そしてメイドカチューシャ。
Absolute peak.
とかいったりしてな。なんてな、冗談。
The episode that clip is from also features both a beach scene and a hot spring scene. I know the show is good, again it's won awards, but you can clearly see what they're doing here. So characters like the one Opliger lovingly described as physical manifestations of moe would then go on to be dubbed moe blobs, as a sort of
Oh damn, I actually haven't heard that term in a long time.
passive-aggressive term referring to the fact that a lot of these characters don't have strong features outside of being an amorphous blob of cuteness, and K-On! Would be one of the biggest shows to have its characters deemed moe blobs for obvious reasons. And this represents the sort of final split in the waifu archetype that I mentioned.
But again, even K-On! Is like, you're being disingenuous. Like, if you've actually seen the show and say that this character have nothing going on, it's obviously like nothing grandiose, it's a lot more subtle, but they all have a lot more going on than what you might think at first, right? I mean, Yui, the main girl, she's a klutz. She starts as someone with no real drive in life. Even when she initially joined the club, she doesn't really want to play an instrument, she just wants to laze around. It's all about her, like, getting friends, getting motivated to do things, learning about, friendship. I mean, it's all very subtle, right? It's not doing it like a lot of drama show where it's gonna be like explicitly spelled out for you. It's a lot more subtle, but there's a lot going on in the background in a much more simplistic way.
Mentioned. Now, instead of tsundere and moe characters like Rei and Asuka in one show, you'd have an entire show built around a tsundere or moe character, or an entire cast of girls that were all different flavors of moe. It became increasingly common to take a single personality trait and stretch out an entire anime around it. Though, while tons of shows would come out since K-On!, none would quite recapture the magic like the original, including Love Live, which is just K-On!, but now the high school girls are idols and they have to compete in a pop star competition. I have
Yeah, I guess.
not seen Love Live. I know it's massive in Japan. I mean, it was ranked the top-selling media franchise for the entire country in 2016, but I just don't care that much. And that general feeling of not caring seems to be a prevalent theme coming toward the end of the 2010s. Not just among video essayists who've spent 3 weeks researching cute anime girl shows for a silly video, but for the anime watching audience as a whole. Because one thing I found very consistent while looking online is that while moe was absolutely massive with the success of K-On!, it seems people don't talk about it nearly as much anymore. The discussion of the topic seems to have died down quite a bit.
But, I mean, sure, but I don't think it means that it's died down. Like there's still a ton of moe show all the time, and even regular show have a lot more moe character, right? But I think people just don't use the term as much, right? People might just say cute or waifu or whatever, right?
In recent years. And I think the reason for this is almost entirely due to how prevalent moe is in the anime community now. It's just ingrained in the medium itself that there are cute girls who are gonna do cute things sometimes. We as an audience have become desensitized to it. It's now as much a part of anime as shonen protagonists yelling whenever they power up. It might be in every show, but there's not much to talk about. This falls right in line with the massive rise of the ironic usage of waifu. Most people that use the word, which is very popular, don't use it sincerely. It's just become a part of anime discussion. Hot girl equals waifu even if you have zero actual feelings for them, which just leads actual waifu culture to sort of simmer in the background without anyone noticing or discussing it. However, there is still discourse being had over genuine feelings for characters. More than ever, in fact. It's just completely shifted outside of anime and manga. On July 13th, 2011, a YouTuber by the name of Amy Yamato would upload a video titled First Vlog, trying this out. In it, she would try out a popular trend at the time, vlogging, where she would sit down in front of a camera and talk to it about her day. The main topic of the almost 2-minute video was all about her moving back to London from Tokyo and how a lot had changed since she first left. And all of this would be fairly standard vlog content at the time, except for one thing. Amy Yamato was not a real person. She was actually a computer-generated character being portrayed by a real person who would play the character of Amy. And
that's a VTuber.
And Amy would continue to upload regular vlogs and assorted videos to YouTube without ever acknowledging that she was an animated avatar. Much later in 2016, a channel by the name of Kazuna AI would debut as another fully animated avatar.
But actually, if you know the history of VTubing, some people say that it goes even further, maybe 80s or 90s with some other like VTuber like kind of 3D character project, but you know, not quite anything like VTuber would really be like.
Avatar, though this time run by an entire production company named Activate and professionally voice acted by Nozomi Kasuga. And she would be dubbed
not just voice acted, but body acted.
A virtual YouTuber, or VTuber for short. Kazuna AI would adopt a more classic anime aesthetic than Amy and would upload daily content for several years, though it would only take 10 months for her to reach 2 million subscribers. And by mid-2018, with the release of technology like Live 2D that made avatars available to the public, there would be over 4,000 VTubers uploading on YouTube, with a collective subscriber count of 12.7 million. From 2018 to today, and especially during the COVID pandemic, VTubers would skyrocket in popularity. Full VTuber agencies like Nijisanji and HoloLive would open, creating and debuting dozens of now gigantic channels with millions of daily viewers. And in 2020, VTubers accounted for 38% of YouTube's top 300 most profitable channels, with a total revenue of $26 million.
So I guess we're getting into the way the lines have blurred, right? Anime girl avatar, but a real person behind them, not just voice acting, but acting, if you will. And yet VTubers are very, very moe. And then evolution of moe for sure, and waifu.
Now, I won't linger too long on the history of VTubers or how they relate to waifus, because honestly it's a whole different beast that could be its own video. Also, they're real people, so it's a bit harder to talk about them like they don't actually exist. But suffice to say, they are essentially the final evolution of what Azuma and Galbraith were talking about. You now have no story or fiction related to these characters at all, because they're just real people putting on shows as these personas.
But again, it's not fully true, because first, some of them have an actual like backstory, right? Like, you know, some of them are acting like their fantasy backstory of I was a knight and all this and all this. Some of them play into it, some of them don't. But also then they have their real story, both as you know, their real life story as a human being, right? But also as a VTuber, like their story as this virtual character and all that. And there's a lot of like storyline to it, if that makes sense. you know, there's a lot of character development and all that.
And because they're fully interactive, the continued enjoyment of their character can happen in real time. You don't have to watch their television show or read their manga, you can watch them play Minecraft for 8 hours a day on YouTube. You don't have to look for fan works to continue feeling moe from them, you can directly interact with them through stream chats and comment sections, and communicate with all of the other fans of the character in those same places. The characters are still anime girls with cute designs and high-pitched voices. In fact, a lot of them even crank up the cute factor to a degree that most anime don't dare to, but the interactions with them are interactions with real people, which leads to a much stronger ability for the audience to garner feelings for them because it's essentially merged waifu culture with the already existing relationship dynamic of content creators.
That's true.
All in all, VTubers are the newest continuation of this history we've been discussing.
I didn't actually make that connection, but yes.
Which I find interesting. They are very different in how people engage with them and feel for them, and some might even argue it's impossible to feel moe at all because they aren't entirely fictional, but it is that evolution that fascinates me and is why I bring them up. However, that's where I'll end the discussion of waifu history, because that's about where it ends. We've now reached the current year. VTubers are a currently existing phenomena, and moe and waifus are still going strong. The history is still being made, and I am very interested to see where it goes. So all we can do to continue this video is talk about why all of it was important. Now, I would like to preface the rest of this video by saying that from here on out we start getting into opinion and speculation. While the history of waifus is documented, the psychology and cultural influence really isn't, or at least not as much as it should be. So I've taken it upon myself to fill in the gaps with my own ideas. But I am not a psychologist, I am not a sociologist, I am not any sort of professional that would have a credible opinion on the relationships between people and fictional characters.
You're a YouTuber, I mean, who has the most credible opinion on YouTubers? Come on. Whatever I say is true. You guys know that.
What I am is a 23-year-old college dropout talking to a camera while sitting in my living room. So keep that in mind with everything I have to say. However, I don't think it takes someone with a PhD to explain, or at least talk about, why someone develops feelings for a fictional character. In fact, if you've grown up in the age that I have, being surrounded by media and characters since birth, then it should be quite self-evident. Humans are empathetic creatures. The sole reason for our survival as a species is because we're able to relate to and communicate with others. And so, going into the modern age, we started to communicate more abstractly. We learned that we could empathize with media like television and movies, we could relate to the characters and their struggles, and we could feel real emotions for fiction. I mean, I know I cried at the beginning of Up, but not only are we able to feel emotions from media, we're able to cry or laugh or feel catharsis from fictional stories as a way to vent those emotions and deal with the real world better. You know, if you've ever gone through a rough breakup, you know it can help to watch a movie that makes you cry. If you're feeling depressed, watching something that can make you laugh is extremely helpful. And love,
which is one of my favorite things, right? Like, when I get depressed, for me it's more moe anime, you know? Again, moe anime makes me happy, and, you know, very often I rewatch the same show again and again, right? I mean, Keon, Gabriel Dropout, it doesn't really matter, like, most moe anime that have, like, almost ever, like, any sad moments, yeah, it's perfect.
Affection and intimacy aren't desires that are any different from a desire to laugh or cry. They're still emotions that people need to express and will vent through media if they're unable to feel it in their everyday life, because anime gives you every opportunity to feel those things. And as characters you grow to be very attached to, you see their emotional states in their day-to-day lives, you watch them develop and learn everything about who they are as a person, and they're often people you want to like. So it should come as no surprise that someone can fall in love with an anime character, or take waifuism seriously. It's already normal to grow attached to characters in shows and movies. Loving them or feeling affection towards them is just another step forward. If someone wants to feel intimacy and anime provides that, then feeling intimate towards a fictional character is a logical conclusion. And it's one that's often a response to the growing turmoil of real life. Unsurprisingly, if you look back at the history of waifu culture I just covered, all the developments fall in line with a real need to vent emotion. The original otaku of the 60s and 70s were all part of the student movements of Japan. Massive protests on the political left that shook the entire country. And after the exhaustion of these protests, students would go on to find solace in lighthearted shoujo manga and bashoujo. Going into the 90s, Japan had then faced the collapse of their economic bubble. The whole era is referred to as the lost decade because the economy crawled to a standstill. So with a newly popular show like Evangelion, people could find escapism that promoted a positive message about connecting with others. Even going into 2011, shortly after the release of K-On!, Japan was hit with Fukushima, the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl that was caused by an even more devastating tsunami. There was now more need than ever for positive media that you could consume to avoid the tension of real life. Who cared if the story was deep or complex? You just needed it to be fun. And throughout all of this, the entire world has become more isolated than ever. The number of people in their 20s and 30s that have never developed real relationships keeps growing, and the feeling of collective loneliness has gotten exponentially worse in recent years, especially in Japan, where the birth rate has fallen so much that the population actually peaked in 2009. So with all that loneliness comes a desire from people to project unreciprocated feelings into something familiar, which can come in the form of a waifu. Though, as it is a common misconception, I do not think that waifuism in moe culture means someone is unable to tell the difference between real and fantastical, or that they treat them the same, but rather just the same way that you can cry at a movie while understanding the character you saw die was fake.
Until the point where you marry Hatsune Miku officially, you know?
Waifus are sought after specifically because they too aren't real. As Galbraith states, moe is a desire for the fantastical, not the physical. An attraction to the fantasy form does not necessarily reflect a desire for the physical one. One can have a younger sibling without feeling moe because that person is real and is not performing the character called little sister. Or
I mean, again, you can still feel moe for real people, right? I mean, someone just needs to be cute and make you feel some happy feeling in a certain way, right? Like, it's not that complicated. So I can totally imagine someone with a sibling, I don't know, their little sibling, making them some birthday gift that's very cute. You might feel moe in that instance. So I'm becoming orange again, sorry, the sun, you know. Again, moe is like so varied in how people define it.
Simply because she is not a two-dimensional fantasy. These young characters are not part of the real world and do not demand their partners be socially mature and responsible adults. With moe characters, men can experience love outside the confines of manhood, and women love outside the confines of womanhood. In other words, expressing emotion through fiction is one of the only ways that some types of emotion can even be expressed, especially in the earlier ages of anime, which were tied to more conservative social climates. You surely couldn't express any desire for non-traditional fantasies without being ostracized, so you had to funnel that into moe characters and fiction. And with the advent of otaku culture and later the internet age, people were able to express these non-traditional desires to others without criticism or consequence. And it's because of all this that I don't see an inherent problem with waifus. I don't see a major issue with the process of enjoying fictional characters. As long as people are responsible adults, they should be able to freely express love towards anything they want to.
Yeah, but we see that's the problem, right? Most people are not responsible for anything, right? And especially in a country like Japan, where again, they have such a crisis, you know, you can definitely argue that it's not helping, you know, and you can definitely assume that a lot of people into waifus have probably not the skills and given up on real relationship, you know, and stuff like waifus is comforting them, helping them, and not helping them getting back into real life interaction and all that. You can definitely argue that, and some people do, you know.
After all, why should it matter so much if someone is in love with a character and wants to share that love with others? Such actions aren't harming anyone, and in fact might be both helping the individual and invigorating the manga and anime industries and fan communities. Love is never an easy thing to understand, and it can be embarrassing to watch the silly things that people do when they are in love, but I for one think we should embrace love rather than condemn it. So,
it's a mixed bag again. You know, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah.
You might be wondering why there's still so much time left in the video. As we discuss the history of waifus, you might have noticed that there is quite a lot of focus on the profitability and consumption of these characters. In fact, several quotes I read even alluded to this idea of profiting off of the emotions of consumers. But now is where I'd like to fully talk about the issue. I mean, just think of the ways that people display their love of a fictional character. They buy merchandise of that character. If you really love this anime girl, the only way to show that you love her is to buy a $250 body pillow of her, or a collection of overpriced figures, or a Blu-ray box set of the show she's from. The only way you interact with this character is through spending more money on her. When you think of someone with a waifu, you inherently think of someone with anime merchandise. And that is all entirely on purpose. I showed this graph in a previous video to discuss how much the anime industry makes, but if you look closely, the biggest slice of this pie is merchandise. That's how most of these franchises make their money back. They either make a profit on Blu-rays or they sell a ton of merch. So they have a financial incentive to create stories that have merchandising potential. And one of the best ways to do that is through waifus. Now, we already talked about how these characters were made more cute with less focus on story, but thinking about it in terms of profit makes it clear that it's an issue. When you know that a waifu with tons of appeal will net you more sales, it becomes hard not to just sell out to that crowd. Why make any character that isn't a cute girl you can sell figurines of? Who cares about story or message or themes when you can just make a cast of moe blobs who sell like hotcakes? Because on the flip side, if you don't make any profit, you probably won't stay in the industry very long.
But again, like, it's such a misconception, right? It's really not that easy. Like, not every show is Keon, you know? Like, again, you might look at Keon and some other cheaper moe anime and really have the impression it's the exact same thing, but genuinely, you don't understand the genre. And it's fine, it's not for everybody, you know? But it's really not that simple. Like, you know, very few shows can generally reach that level of perfecting the mix of like using tropes to make a moe character, but also making them different and interesting enough on their own that they actually become popular to the point of making a lot of money. It's really not that easy. Like, if it was that easy, you know, we would know.
As a creator. Then the problem snowballs, because this genuine need to make a profit can very easily slip into exploitation. One of the most predatory extremes of this, and one I've talked about before, being gacha games. Gacha games are built on waifu culture. They will have dozens of cute characters in the roster that appeal to every niche they can think of. They'll give them all backstories and quirky personalities and sometimes even romance options. Then they put up the most egregious monetization strategy to unlock them, where you need to gamble on their virtual slot machine to even see the character you like. They turn genuine feelings of affection people have into a gambling addiction. Some people who take waifus this seriously spend massive amounts of money on them, and some of them might be spending money they can't actually afford to lose, because their emotions for these characters are genuine and the industry is conditioning them into tying their self-worth to these material possessions.
But by that level of arguing, I mean, waifu is only one part of it. All of the modern media landscape is mostly like that, right? I mean, superheroes, if you're into robot stuff, if you're into, you know, any kind of like modern media, and it gets popular, whatever company behind it will do everything to merchandise everything and make the most money possible. It doesn't have to be waifus.
Waifu culture is telling them to put their emotional well-being into question if they don't spend enough on their favorite character. After all, how can you love your waifu if you don't own all their stuff? Now, throughout this video, you should have gotten an idea of just how important the female perspective is to waifu and anime culture as a whole. After all, this all started from shoujo manga. Female creators like Rumiko Takahashi or Naoko Takeuchi then pioneered the bishoujo space, and even when it got continued by male creators like Hideaki Anno, the female influence was apparent. However, there are still massive amounts of very male-centric anime. Your typical shonen and seinen, which sort of developed alongside all of this moe and bishoujo, taking a lot of elements and using them in stories that were strictly written by and for men. Now, the history itself isn't that important to the development of waifus, which is why I didn't cover it. Shonen wasn't ever really a leader in the history so much as it caught up to the rest of the community and absorbed certain aspects of it. But the reason I'm talking about it now is because a lot of anime in that space in particular comes with a much stronger appeal to male fantasy, which, when combined with our problem of exploitation and unhealthy behavior, can lead to a bad place. Anyone who has seen enough anime has seen at least some female characters that perpetuate an incredibly warped perception of women. They might be incredibly submissive and meek, seemingly to the point that they wouldn't be able to function without the help of a male counterpart. They might get put into a sort of housewife or maid role, sometimes literally, and they might be a strong warrior that kills 1,000 men in the battlefield wearing nothing but a metal bikini, but they've never kissed a boy before and turn into a puddle of mush when the dork of a protagonist talks to them. Now, these are exaggerations, but real characters in line with each of those tropes do exist, and they definitely paint a pretty awful standard for women. Yet, they come from waifu culture and that strong focus on male fantasy.
But then by the same, though I know it's not as bad, right? But the same saying of like the shitty kind of archetype is the freaking, I know, I always talk about how much I hate it, but the super, like, either the super meek, you know, herbivore guy, right? That there's so much now in romance / RM1, you know, the guy that's literally like just Mr. has nothing going on, he has no hobby, is shy, the girl always has to be the one to initiate, or on the other hand, right? The isekai type, super cool guy, and all the girls love him because, you know, he's like such a cool, strong guy without earning it, right? I mean, he's just strong because, and that's it. Those two are terrible too, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if like women look at this character and feel like, you know, they're great.
In order to be profitable, some female characters in these shows will just be made to fit certain tropes, just the same way that some of them are designed to be physically attractive. And often, even when a character breaks the mold, they're still confined to fantasy archetypes. If they're not submissive, they're a tsundere. If they're not typically feminine, they're a tomboy. If they're a strong personality, it's because they grew up around 15 brothers and the author wrote them as a male character in a female's body. The tropes dominate the conception of a lot of characters, even those that are otherwise pretty well written. And that conception shines a lot of light on the situation when you consider the people behind it. The creator of Naruto, Masashi Kishimoto, has self-admitted to being bad at writing women, and the girls in Naruto are constantly ridiculed for having a lack of agency and having too much focus put on their crushes on the male leads. Sakura,
which is always interesting because like Sakura's useless, yeah. It feels like it's not that hard, right? Like when you say you're not good at writing women, it always feels kind of like a cheap out to me. Like all you have to do is write a character that's not useless, right? You know what I mean? That isn't, like, everybody know that the biggest no-no is to just make it like a female character that's constantly helped by the guy and she never does anything. I'm not saying that, like, you know, like there's some good shoujo where, like, you know, it's the prince type guy often helping the woman. I'm not saying that's always bad, right? But it's when it's only that, right? And it feels like it's not that hard to write a character that's not like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You don't have to write like a shoujo level female character exploration. Just write a female character that does things is useful, you know. I'm not saying like write a simple girl boss either, you know that. But yeah, I feel like it's not that hard to make something passable, you know.
Sakura is useless is literally one of the biggest memes in the anime community. The director of Persona and Catherine, Katsura Hashino, once said in an interview, "I've never successfully forged a true friendship with a girl in real life," which is just insane. The Persona series is about forging friendship.
I mean, that might be weird, but I mean, it's the same. I've been in a relationship, but I don't know if I've been friend. Like, I've had co-worker girl, but I don't think we were friend. Acquaintance, yeah, I wasn't a big fan. So I probably can say the same. I don't think I've ever been friend with a girl in real life. Yeah, that's kind of weird to say.
With other characters. Catherine is about the protagonist's relationship with women, and the director just has no personal experience. Even
kind of crazy.
Chainsaw Man, which has some of my favorite women in anime, has them written to be the author's type. Makima is a commanding character explicitly because Tatsuki Fujimoto had his bike stolen in college by a girl and thought,
oh yeah, I forgot that fucking story. But is that a problem? Like, the Chainsaw Man one are great. Who cares if it's this fetish? If they're actually interesting, like, it's fine.
Thought it was hot. That's not a joke. That's her real story. His female characters are so strong because he has a thing for dominant women. So you have characters written for male fan.
Well, then, what's the problem with useless Sakura? I mean, maybe Kishimoto is into women who like are useless, and he can be the cool guy that do everything for them. I mean, it doesn't sound great, but maybe it's his fetish. I don't know. That's actually kind of sad.
Because of the industry's hyperfixation with waifus, and then you have these characters being written by people who self-admit to being bad with women. Now I'll give change.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, like, what you gonna do, right? You can't, like, you're gonna tell him don't write any female character. I mean, you can't quite do that in a story, so yeah. Like, maybe the I was gonna say maybe the like the manga magazine should force the author, like, you know, to interact with women. I don't know, get them like woman assistant or something. Generally, I mean, I'm joking, but you know, like, that might help if you can ask a woman about like what would you think this character would think or say or whatever.
Chainsaw Man and Persona pass because I genuinely like them, but at its worst, this can all end up mixing together into the worst cocktail of harmful stereotypes and offensive writing. You know, I love Demon Slayer. It's the biggest anime in the world right now. It's massively popular and appeals to a wide array of people.
Is it bad in terms of women? I've only seen the first season and the first movie, and as you guys know, I'm not really into it. I really struggle with it. It's like on one side it looks amazing, but man, do I find it very boring in terms of character and setting, I guess.
The main female lead is literally a pet to the protagonist.
Is Nezuko really problematic? Like, I don't know. Maybe I don't see the problem, but like, she's not a romance interest. It's like little sister turned into a demon, and so he has to carry her until he finds a cure. I mean, like, it seems fine to me. The point isn't to objectify her or anything. I don't know. I never thought this was a problem.
That's kinda weird. I mean, you could replace Nezuko with a pit bull and it wouldn't change anything about the show, other than the fact that Zenitsu would now be constantly harassing a dog. Alright, well, what about one of my other favorite shows, Death Note? It's a fantastic drama with some of the coolest and smartest characters in fiction. Probably one of the easiest recommendations to someone new.
What's wrong with Death Note? I don't remember. Like, there was Light's girlfriend, which doesn't do much, but it's because he's using her, right? As a cover for the cops. So again, she isn't great because that's the point. Like, he's just using her.
New to anime, and yet every female in it is written like the creator hates them. They are all either desperately in love with Light to the point that they can't form a thought that isn't about him, or they get taken advantage of because Light is smarter and cooler than them, which is really kind of awful when you think about it. Now, Demon Slayer...
Again, like, maybe I'm the problem, but what's the problem? Light is kind of a piece of shit, so that's part of the problem. That's part of the character, right? Like, it's not just a female character. A lot of male characters in Death Note also kind of like buy into him being such a cool guy, right? No?
Is amazing. The first 25 episodes of Death Note are fantastic, and I'd very much like for more people to watch and enjoy these shows. But the writing of female characters can actively hurt that. Even if you don't care about the depiction of women, these characters are just not as strong and interesting as they could be, and that...
I don't know. Like, again, I feel like disagreeing with this might give me a bad look, but I don't know if I agree with this. I don't think every character needs to be interesting, because in Death Note, there's a ton of ultra uninteresting male character too. Now you might say the problem is that there isn't a single interesting female character, but I think it's the discussion of representation today, you know? Like, does every show need a good representation of every character? I mean, you know, if there was one, I wouldn't complain, right? I mean, if there was a great female character in Death Note, I wouldn't complain, but does it really matter? You know? Like, it's clearly not what the show is going for, what it's trying to do, so does it matter? I don't know.
Comes from this focus on male fantasy over everything else, which leads to the most common counter argument you'll hear. These shows are made for a target demographic, and if you don't like them, they're not made for you. But oftentimes the only thing
I don't
keeping
like that
people
argument.
outside that demographic from enjoying the show is the focus on the demographic. Like if Death Note wasn't so obviously a power fantasy for edgy 15-year-olds, it would be enjoyable to more people.
Basically.
Now you could say that better written female characters might hurt the enjoyment of the show for those edgy 15-year-olds,
which is weird.
but I would argue that if you can't appeal to male fantasy without being straight up sexist, then you shouldn't even try. And in general, I think anyone should be able to enjoy a show with an appealing waifu character or male fantasy element without the fantasy appealing to them and not have the show then be ruined by it. Because there are tons of people out there watching anime who don't care for a lot of these waifu archetypes or aren't attracted to anime girls at all. And these shows are just a worse experience for them when they don't have to be. I get that there's target audiences, but you can write waifus that are also good representations for women. It's not mutually exclusive. Do you know how hot the cast of Jujutsu Kaisen is? Yeah, most writers just...
Are they good? I've only seen season 1. And I won't lie, I barely remember the female character. I don't think they've done much yet. Do I know they're popular, yeah? I just don't think they've done much in season 1.
don't care enough to try because they can be successful without having to. Or they're Kishimoto and probably shouldn't be writing women.
I mean, I also think you're just expecting too much. Like, so much of those authors are not perfect, right? Like, it's probably not just female character. Like, they have many flaws in writing, you know? Like, you're really expecting way too much, you know? From authors to be able to, like, be good at every single thing. I'm not saying it's bad to have those criticism. It's totally justified. I mean, in the same way we can say, like, this author is not good at writing long-term story or short-term story or whatever, right? But again, like, there's so few authors that are literally good at everything they try to do in a manga. Like, literally so few. So, I think you're just expecting too much. Especially if, like, those authors are self-confessed, you know, barely interacted with women. Yeah, how can you expect them to do a good job? I mean, what do you want from them? They just haven't interacted with women. I mean, what do you want?
At all if they admit they're so bad at it. Now, the assumed problem lots of people have with these harmful depictions is that they cause misogyny. I mean, the whole of anime gets accused of this by a lot of people. And when you see something like Death Note, you can't help but see their point.
Is Death Note really that bad? I just don't see it, genuinely. Like, in the last Fanservice video, he was talking about Fire Force, and I could see that, like, if I'm 12 and I'm watching Fire Force and, you know, all the female characters, you know, especially, like, Tamaki was it, constantly, like, Fanservice, right? You know, that might definitely warp my way of viewing things, but what's the problem with Death Note? I mean, like, it doesn't feel as bad as, you know, many other shows.
But I don't necessarily agree. I myself grew up in a time where video games were being accused of causing violence, and that argument, while similarly sensical, was proven objectively false, with no correlation being found between the two and violent video games still being made. So I think the anime and misogyny argument is much the same. However, in the most extreme cases, what these fantasies do is act like a safe haven for those who already have pretty poor views in real life. Anime might not cause these harmful thoughts.
Yeah, but what you gonna do about it?
But you'll often see that people with already unsavory views love certain kinds of anime. Whether it's Reddit threads or YouTube comments or video essays on feminism bad, I'm sure plenty of you have seen the arguments from some of these people that go along the lines of real women need to act more like anime girls, or Western women need to act more like Japanese women, which...
Yeah, that's a big one. That's such a cringe line. Like, it automatically kind of say, like, you're too much of a not a great person, that no woman in your own country is interested in you. So, like, you're saying that women in other country, you even assume that women in this other country would be into you. It's really cringe of a line.
Which is the same argument because their entire view of Japan is from anime. And these people are the problem, not the media they consume. But it's important to note
that feels like a minority, though, like a very small minority. And I'm gonna say something controversial. This minority doesn't matter. No, I mean, obviously minorities matter in the grand scheme of things, but this kind of fucked up minority is what I mean. In the same way that, like, I don't know, like a KKK minority, fuck them, they don't matter, you know? Fuck this minority, I guess.
that the waifu fantasy does appeal to them, which is still not good. It's hard to consider yourself a fan of a medium that appeals to harmful people.
But that's all medium. I don't know. Like, you watch Game of Thrones, right? And the other story is about like the clan leader guy getting like a free wife, Daenerys, and just raping her. You know, someone watching that might be like, hell yeah, I wish I was that guy, right? But, you know, there's so much more to the story, and while it is a bad thing, it's fucking part of the story of Daenerys, of that clan leader guy. It goes much deeper and isn't glorifying it, and yet someone might watch this and be super into it and be like, this is fucking great, I wish that was me. And you know, you can't escape it. I mean, you make any piece of media and someone is gonna like be into the wrong thing, you know.
Now, this last problem, as you might suspect, is pretty serious. It's dealing with possibly the worst issue in the anime community. One so bad that I'm
L. What is L?
not sure YouTube even lets me say the word, or at least not as much as I'm about to say it. So just to be safe, I will be coming up with an alternative. This segment of the video is about lemonade. You know, the genre of anime starring lemons? If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's probably for the best.
Does he mean hentai or I'm confused?
Now, I will try to be sensitive of this issue, and I don't get too deep into it or talk about anything that bad, but if hearing about it still upsets you, feel free to skip to the timecode on screen. And the discussion of lemonade is a very complicated one. It becomes especially complicated when you learn I've been lying to you about the history of waifus up until now.
What is the game answer?
You see,
Oh, does he mean loli? I'm stupid.
the lemonade as we in the West know it came from Vladimir Nabokov's Lemony.
I see. That's where I was going with this. I was very confused. At first I was like hentai, but it's not an L. Then I was thinking like sexual assault, fanservice scene kind of thing, you know, which definitely is bad for like, as you was talking about, you know, like objectification of like bad things.
A book about an adult man and a 12-year-old girl. This then spawned the term Lemonade complex to describe people like that adult man, and lemonade became a shortening of that, with obviously very negative connotations. However, I think it's important to note right off the bat that while it does still get into questionable content, the word as it was adopted by Japan is completely different from how we understand it, and has a rather positive connotation referring to cuteness and innocence. For example, Lemonade fashion in Japan just refers to people dressing up in frilly dresses and gothic clothing, and has so little to do with Nabokov's book that many Lemonade idols were disgusted and offended to learn what it was about. Though the loose beginnings of the culture in anime actually began with shoujo manga, where cute and innocent girls were already being depicted in softer artistic styles. And as we know, in the 60s and 70s, more people, especially men, began reading shoujo. So with them came more adult depictions.
I think he talked about this in the hentai video we watched a couple weeks ago. I think he talked about some of the early original stuff like that in like early Japan and the early like Dojin magazine.
These youthful and cute characters, which slowly reached a turning point in popularity. And the person who heralded this turning point was none other than Hideo Azuma, the person who started the Bishoujo boom. I didn't mention it before, but his official title is the father of Lemonade, and his most notable work was—
Really? I don't think I know the guy. Like, what manga has he done? Wait, what was his name?
It before other than his official title, Azuma, the popularity. And the person who heralded this turning point was none other than Hideo Azuma, the person—
Hideo Azuma. Has he done anything like very well known? No? Or is it just that it's important for the history? I don't recognize the name. Yeah, nothing I would recognize, I guess. It doesn't have actually that much credit. As far as anime, there's only 3 things. Character design, creator, and then a lot of manga. Yeah, it seems like most of this stuff didn't actually make it to the West. There's only 2 manga with even some rating. Yeah. Number 1 is Shiso Nikki. Okay. Yeah, I guess not surprised I haven't heard anything from him. Well, it's only 1 volume too. Alright.
person who started the Bishoujo boom. I didn't mention it before, but his official title is the father of Lemonade, and his most notable work was an adult parody of Little Red Riding Hood in a comic called Cybele, where
Oh yeah, I think he talks about this in the entire video.
he took the rounded bodies of Osamu Tezuka and put them into adult situations. Meaning before the Bishoujo boom ever started, what he actually brought into pop culture was the Lemonade boom.
Stop saying it like that, say YouTube. Like, I don't think saying dirty or lolita on YouTube is gonna kill you. Genuinely. I mean, I don't know why YouTubers keep doing this. I mean, myself, I don't censor myself because I just don't care, right? It's such a small channel. But I've never gotten age restricted for like saying any swear word or any word like this. Like, not even once. Yeah.
Lemonade manga, like a lot of anime, started with fan works or doujinshi, and it actually played a massive role in attracting male fans to Comiket, the Japanese doujinshi market. Comiket's first run in 1975 had an attendance rate of 90% women, but by 1981 the number of male and female participants were equal. Lemonade, created by and for men at these markets, served as a response to the female-dominated yaoi, and one of the first characters to grow popular in fan works shared in these markets was Clarice from Hayao Miyazaki's Castle of Cagliostro.
Surprising.
Who was so popular that early lemon doujinshi were originally called
So it's interesting that like he brings a character like her. I watched this movie recently on the channel, and isn't she literally like a badly written woman character? I guess you can give this to Monkey Punch, the author of like Lupin III, rather than Miyazaki, because we know Miyazaki is better at woman character, but yeah, she's like literally the princess in distress that needs saving. That's about it. That's her character.
Clarice magazines. The genre then grew in popularity until several official Lemonade magazines started to be produced, including Lemon People, which actually refers to lemons, like it actually uses the word lemon. I didn't
to actually use the word lemon. What?
Change that. And Manga Bariko, the magazine responsible for coining the term otaku in 1983, used it to refer to fans of Bishoujo and Hideo Azuma's lemon manga. One of the most recognized artists of this new era was Aki Uchiyama, known as the King of Lemonade, as he produced 160
So there's the god, the king. Damn.
pages of manga a month for these magazines.
Wait, what?
One of the most recognized artists of this new era was Aki Uchiyama, known as the King of Lemonade, as he produced 160 pages of manga a month.
How is that even possible? Like, Weekly Author will do like 60 page max a month? Like 60, 80 page max 160? What the fuck? Even with like simplified art style, that's kind of crazy.
For these magazines. Uchiyama was actually so prolific that his work was published alongside mainstream series in the magazine Shonen Champion, which you might recognize as the magazine that debuted Baki the Grappler, Cutie Honey, and Beastars. However, the most notable work of Uchiyama was actually the world's first anime called Lemonita Anime in 1984. And the world's first Lemonade video game named Lemonita Syndrome was produced by none other than Enix in 1983. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because in 2003 Enix merged with another company called Square to form Square Enix, the now famous creators of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Though after 1984 and all the way up until 1989, Lemonade saw a slow descent in popularity. The focus was never put directly on the attraction to these characters, but rather the style they represented. And so in order to expand this style, Moe and Bishoujo adopted a lot of the traits and aesthetics of Lemonade and continued to push the culture of cute, except now to a much broader appeal. This then resulted in the actual Bishoujo boom, which would later carry on with Sailor Moon and Evangelion, and you already know the rest. From all this, I hope that I don't understate just how important Lemonade was to the development of Bishoujo, Moe, and the entirety of anime culture, because without it, everything from Gainax to Studio Ghibli would not exist as they do. Gainax's first work with Daikon 3 starred a lemon character. Hayao Miyazaki's entire style work with Daikon 3 starred a lemon character. Hayao Miyazaki's entire style was taken from the same shoujo that inspired Hideo Azuma, and his early success was partly due to the fans of Lemonade, though he's been...
But again, I think today, like, what people consider loli is constantly, like, argued about. Like, technically, for some people, it's any character underage, so even like a super big boobs Giallo character, if she's nice cool, I mean, technically she would be ugly, and I'm talking about like the Western view of it, right? But for some, it's only characters that look like, I don't know, they look 12 or something, you know, so like super flat, super small. Earlier I showed like that one character from Shukutensei, the Demon Lord girl. Basically that's what ugly is for most people, and for me that's it. For me my definition is like literally like, you know, tiny looking character. Though I guess technically, from what I understand, any character like under 18 is ugly. No? I was thinking then like, what about Shota? But I'm thinking of like an high school guy. That's not a Shota then. Yeah, no, it has to be a small character.
On the record multiple times to state just how much he hates them. But suffice to say, the history of anime would be completely different without Lemonade. I mean, even Square Enix has it firmly planted in their catalog.
I mean, you can say that about anything in the medium. If one thing was different, a lot would be different.
Though the downfall of the term and the rise of its negative connotation in Japan came in 1989, when a man by the name of Stoma Miyazaki kidnapped and did things I don't feel comfortable talking about to 4 girls under the age of 7. Miyazaki was actually referred to as the Otaku because widespread photos of his room were circulating.
I think we watched a video about this guy recently too, no? No, I think recently it was about a guy who went after young boys. Yeah.
Which found them to be full of VHS tapes and tons of manga, including Lemonade and shoujo magazines. And when faced with sentencing, he pled insanity, with his defense at the time saying he'd been unable to distinguish between fiction and reality. Now, going into the 80s, and even since then, Japan has had a very low crime rate, so something as awful as what Miyazaki did hit national headlines and caused a massive moral panic, especially around manga and Lemonade. However, after the panic of Stoma Miyazaki died down, Moe found itself in the mainstream, and with it carrying over the defining aspects of Lemonade, you can bet that the culture has had a resurgence. Anime today has tons of lemon characters, whether it's 9,000-year-old dragons or just adult characters drawn to be 2 feet tall.
Is Rebecca a loli? I guess. Again, I think everybody's definition will be different. Yeah. Like when I look at Rebecca, I don't really think loli, I think small woman. But it's because I know she's an old character. Man, it's confusing. Definition are really open.
The influence of the Lemonade boom is still felt today, and there are many fans of the genre still around. Lemonade has just ingrained itself in anime culture right alongside moe and waifus. In fact, the word
I mean, it's very, very mixed with those two things. Especially moe.
Waifu itself even has roots in Lemonade. This character is named Mr. Kimura, and he is described by Wikipedia as a creepy and ephibophiliac classical Japanese
A what? Ephibophiliac? What does that even mean?
teacher who openly admits he became a teacher to be closer to high school girls.
Classic.
So when the girls find a photo of a beautiful woman who he calls
my waifu,
they can't believe this creep would be married to someone like that. Yes, the term waifu was popularized by a pervert character who likes lemons. Isn't that interesting? Though, before we continue, I should clarify that there is a big difference to me between anime with young characters, anime with lemon characters, and the problem I have with Lemonade. Because for the most part, anime characters are made to be young to appeal to a teenage audience. That's pretty much it. The audience is 17, so the characters have to be 17. Which is why almost every anime has the whole cast in high school, even though they might be a superhero or gang member or internationally hunted serial killer. Numerical ages in anime just mean nothing, because even if the creators write and draw someone as an adult, they have to be made a teenager to be published in a shonen manga.
But also it's always the argument of it's not just because the audience is 17, especially because since anime and manga have been around for so long, there's been many generations that are not 17 but are still fan, and yet, you know, most of what you can check out as far as anime manga stories still like high school stories, right? I don't know what the percentage is, but I feel like 70-80% of anime is probably set in high school, or the character high school age, right? But again, ton of people have been fan for like sometimes decades, and they are not that age, but they still like the medium, they still like the stories, they still like it. So, you know, like, yeah, most of the stories you're gonna watch are like, you know, high schooler stories. You don't really have a choice. People always say, I wish we had more like, you know, adult characters and adult stories. And I think these days there's a bit more like things are shifting a bit. You know, this season is like the one about smoking behind the supermarket, and then Nico about like fucked up adult doing drugs and smoking and all that, right? So, you know, I don't know if that's much better than, you know, high school character romance, but yeah, there's an evolution, I guess.
So my rule of thumb has always been that if the show treats the characters like adults, they are just adults to me and can be put into adult situations even if the numerical age would suggest otherwise. This might be a controversial opinion to have, and I understand if you don't agree, but it's the way I think about things and it makes enjoying anime much easier. For example, in my fan service video, I talked about Tamaki and how much fan service she has, and someone left a comment talking about how creepy they thought the show was because Tamaki was 17. My genuine reaction to that information was to look up her age because I thought she was like 20. Tamaki in the end.
I mean, people always make jokes like that, right? Like, people always bring up that Yoko in Gurren Lagann, the main girl who's also like very fan service heavy, is like 14 or something. But you know, all people are always shocked when they find that out. And then it's like, yeah, does it even matter if you didn't even think that? I mean, just like this big booby anime girl, I mean.
Anime has already graduated school, she is a full-time firefighter alongside adult coworkers, and the show doesn't bring up her age at all. By all means, she is written and treated like a 20-year-old character, and so when she's put into lewd situations, I have no problem with that. Then looking at lemon characters in a lot of regular anime, they're almost always an overlap with moe culture. I mean, moe and bishoujo basically assimilated all the aspects of Lemonade in the late 80s. So attention is drawn to how young these lemon characters are, usually just from their childlike designs, but explicitly for the purpose of making them cute, and that's it. You know, look at any of the Kyoto Animation shows I mentioned. Almost all of them are focused on young schoolgirls, almost all of them have...
None of them are lollies, right? I mean, actually, probably in some later show, maybe. But the Karen girls aren't.
Lemon characters, and yet all of them are just cute girls doing cute things. I have no issue with the use of lemons in this way, and a lot of anime includes lemon characters like this. Even Azumanga Daioh, which has a pervert teacher character, is a comedy anime. Mr. Kimura is a joke. His entire character exists to be made fun of, including the scene where the girls laugh at the idea of him having a wife. So even though the show acknowledges Lemonade culture with a character like him, it's making fun of him and not endorsing his point of view. So the vast majority of anime, though there are lemon characters and tons of teenagers, uses them in ways like I just described, which I don't find to be bad at all. It's only really the most extreme subculture of Lemonade and the audience of that most people have a problem with. That problem
which is
obviously being
yeah.
where a character looks like a child, acts like a child, and is by all means supposed to be a child, 9 years old or 9,000, it doesn't matter, and they're put into lewd or otherwise adult situations. How this affects regular anime, to me, is a continuation of the last problem. Lemonade like this is basically unrealistic depictions of women taken to the extreme. So all my points there apply here too. If you're not into the fantasy, which a good amount of people aren't, lemon characters used in this way are distracting at best and downright hard to watch at worst. It makes things uncomfortable, is very offensive and harmful to a lot of people, and doesn't have any purpose in making the show better.
No, it's just a fetish thing. I mean, definitely won't argue against it. As always, I mean, I don't know how many times I've talked about this. Whenever we watched a video about this topic, I am into lolly, even lolly dojin. As always, if you think I'm a pedo for it, I mean, it's your opinion, right? As I always say, for me, it's literally like the same as violence in a video game. If I play GTA and I kill people in the street, you know, I'm not feeling like I want to do that in real life. It's just like some dumb fantasy fun. Same thing with like lolly, you know, sex dodging. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you anything other than I don't want to fuck a kid in real life. It's, you know, I know for some people, the mere fact that you're into lolly character, which are kid character if you want, makes you like that. And I understand why a lot of people find it disgusting. I won't disagree that it's definitely kind of weird. I mean, you know, it's weird, sure, but again, I can't say anything else that like me, and I assume the vast majority of people who enjoy lolly dodging stuff are not into actual kid, you know? And I'm sure you're gonna find a lot that are actually, you know, real pedos, right? I mean, I'm sure you find stories all the time of, you know, pedo arrested and then they find Loli Dojin or something. But, you know, it's definitely like an extreme minority because of the fact there's like millions of views on most like Loli Dojin, right? And it's not millions of people actually into real kill. You know, it's all like a fantasy, you know, in the same way that there's like millions of people playing GTA and they absolutely have a ton of fun running people over, shooting them in the street and killing them in many horrible ways. Yet they have no interest or fantasy of doing that to anybody in real life. I know some people think this argument is very cheap, but I have no problem with using it because that's actually how I feel, you know. It's really that simple. I mean, again, I won't say to someone who thinks it's kind of disgusting and have a problem with it that they're wrong. I can understand for other people that's pretty weird, you know. But for me, again, like, you know, I'm not into Guru. I think like fucking a corpse is pretty disgusting. I don't feel Guru Dojin. But if you're into it, fine with me because I don't actually think you want to do this in real life. At least majority of people who are into Guru. It's the same thing, you know. Same way, like if you go to P-Hub, most of the top viewed video are gonna be like stepsister, stepmother. I don't actually think that, you know, the 10 million views on that video, you know, that the majority of them actually want to bang their mother or something. Again, I do understand still that it's weird, but for me, I don't know. Like again, what I can say is that I have no interest in kids in real life. I wouldn't say I'm normal overall as a human being, but I'm not interested in kids. But I like loli stuff in anime, manga and all that. I mean, again, I understand it's a very heavy subject and a lot of people just can't, you know, like understand the concept of being into it, into stuff in fiction but not in real life. But that's always been my opinion, you know? Yeah.
Now, obviously, the larger issue of Lemonade people have tends to spread out into the legality or morality of the subject, which starts to get extremely complicated extremely fast. So I'll let people smarter than me touch on that because I don't really want to go anywhere near it.
It's a topic that just cannot have a resolution, right? I mean, in a perfect world, sure, like maybe Loli Dojin and all that would have never become a thing and, you know, anime fan would only have ever been into like, you know, sick woman or something and, you know, it would have never been a debate. Yeah, maybe.
So that's about all I have to say on the subject. I mostly just wanted to include the history of Lemonade because it is very closely related to the history of waifus, and to not address the issues with it would be a disservice.
I mean, one of my waifu is probably Shinobu from Monogatari series, and saying that probably makes some people think, wait, which version? Because she's like a vampire, and at some point she's a loli, at some point she's a full-grown woman, at some point she's like in between. She has many character design. All of them, I guess. I like Shinobu for all the character design. All of them.
Again, most of Lemonade culture is completely fine with me, except for the very worst parts of it, which give all of anime a bad name. However, with that being said, I'd still like nothing more than to wrap up this segment and never speak of it again. So let's do that.
The song, what is it again?
Waifus are an incredibly fascinating and somewhat misunderstood topic. They are intertwined with the very history of anime, and they are ingrained into every facet of the medium. The culture surrounding them has massively influenced Japanese society, which has in turn affected media around the world, which is even more surprising considering how few people know the full story. So hopefully, after watching this far into the video, you understand what a waifu is.
Yes.
I mean, I'd have hoped you'd have learned that by now, otherwise I am terrible at my job. Hopefully you also understand the history of waifus and the most critical points in their development, and hopefully you can understand the psychology of waifus, why someone would have one, and the possible problems that can come with. If anything, I want to clarify that having feelings for a fictional character isn't a bad thing. It can be very healthy for people, and in the anime community, it has been going on since before it even expanded to the West, with little issue. And
I mean, again, gatekeeping what kind of feeling you feel toward fictional characters is really something, right? Like someone who's always crying at like sad stories about characters in story, but then is like weirded out by someone really like liking a character. They're the weird one, you know, like you know, this type of feeling is okay, but not this one, come on.
And now that culture has seeped into the very way we consume media in the modern age. Everything from K-pop stans to celebrity culture to online content creators can be seen through the lens of waifuism, developing feelings for those we don't directly interact with. But at the same time, understanding this culture and its effects are important to discussing its problems. Whether it's the way that creators can exploit their audience, or the way that the audience can end up falling into unhealthy patterns of consumption, or just the way that a lot of anime and manga can end up with less than stellar writing and characters due to the massive fixation on fantasy. All of these issues don't define waifuism, but they are certainly a part of it. And while I make no claims to solve any of them, I did want to at least address them, educate people on them, and hopefully start a discussion about them. Because most people are aware of these problems through the stigma surrounding waifus. A lot of people have unwarranted negative feelings towards the entire culture, which I don't think are helpful. And the discussion of the topic can trend very one-sided. So hopefully having a deeper understanding of all this
isn't that any debate about anything today. You know, I sort of like doing a reaction video like this where, you know, no one is there to stop me. I've got 0 viewers, I'll probably have 0 comments. So whatever bullshit I say, there's no one to tell me otherwise. No one to fight me about it.
Can actually lead to people talking about these issues and trying to solve them, rather than just lumping together all of waifu culture as an inherently bad thing. After all, who doesn't like anime girls?
Where is this song from? I forget.
So first I'd like to give a big thank you.
That's it. Huh? Damn, another good video. I can't believe out of these 2 videos we watched, I talked so much. It's already been 3 hours and a half. I was planning to watch like his next video, but I think I'll keep it for another stream. This is one of the best channels I found recently. Not only the topic he covered, but the way he researched them and covered them. I mean, as a reactor, I always struggle to find the right channel in terms of like channels that are great for reaction because I have a lot to say. You know what I mean? Like some channel, the way they write and present information, I don't find them great for me to talk, you know? Usually they kind of say everything. So yeah, this channel is great for that. I mean, every time we've done a stream covering a video from this channel, I've had so much more yap than I think I've ever had. You know, so it's been great, yeah. I'm definitely watching more from this channel. Definitely. So I'll keep the adult animation video for next time and the visa situation. But yeah, that's my thoughts on waifu. Waifus are great, I like waifus. I don't have a single one myself. I really couldn't name you like a single one that I would choose. Usually I can choose one for a show, but overall. But yeah, that's my take on all this. Great stuff, amazing video. I really enjoyed this. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the reaction. Like, subscribe, comment. Tomorrow we're watching Waifus, Kamina Botan, the Yuri drinking girl anime. Come watch if you want. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time. ExoticBankai.